Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 1. Now let's start the fanfic. It was dark in the village of Konoha. The streets were lighting up and the villagers were celebrating the day the Kyuubi was defeated. A group of ninja wearing black hooded cloaks with a white dragon on the back of them were walking through the busy streets. 3 however had their hoods down revealing their faces. One was a man who was 6 feet 0. He had long brown hair that was tied into a ponytail, deep green eyes, and a tan-like complexion. He also had a scar on his left cheek. He was Joe Hayabusa, the Shiroi Ryu White Dragon, of the Hayabusa village and leader of the second Dragon Clan branch. He's ranked as an S-class nin with a flee on sight order and was the only ninja capable of going toe-to-toe with the Yellow Flash and lived to tell about it. The man was calm, wise, loyal, trustworthy, and powerful. Walking beside him was his wife, Scherzer Hayabusa, the Kuroi Tenshi Black Angel, of the Hayabusa village. She was 5 feet 8 and without a doubt the most beautiful woman ever to be seen. She had long flowing black hair that stopped to the middle of her back, deep blue eyes, the face of an angel, and flawless ivory-colored skin that seemed to glow in the moonlight, giving her the appearance of a goddess. Holding her hand was her 6-year-old son Ryu Hayabusa. He appeared to be a younger version of his father, only his hair was in a shorter ponytail and had a tan complexion. He was wearing a black ninja gi outfit with a dragon at the location of where his heart is. They were heading to the Hokage Tower to discuss the new treaty. As they pass an alley, a scream was heard. "2-san ka-san, what was that?" Young Ryu asked. Joe looked into the dark alley only to see a mob made up of civilians and shinobi that were Chunin and Junin beating on a blonde-haired boy who wore a dirty white t-shirt and blue shorts with bats, clubs, beer bottles, and to his shock kunai while screaming, "Kill the demon and avenge the Yondaime." Scherzer's eyes widened in horror when she saw this. What kind of monsters do this to a child? She thought and saw a Chunin raise a katana in the air while grinning like a madman. "Dai Kyuubi brat," he yelled as he started to bring the blade down while everyone cheered. "Joe-kun, stop him," she cried. Joe's eyes become slitted and he vanishes and appears between the Chunin and the blonde boy who was trying to protect himself with his bleeding arms. Joe then punches the shocked Chunin hard in the stomach, breaking a few of his ribs and sends him flying out of the alley and into an ice cream cart. Scherzer orders one of the hooded nin to take Ryu away from this and he nods, taking the young dragon with him while the others deal with the mob. Said mob was backing away while the other hooded dragon nin appeared behind Joe and around the blonde boy with their backs turned at the boy who was whimpering and trembling in fear while having their swords drawn. Scherzer then appeared in front of the blonde and kneels down. The blonde boy had tears falling from his blue eyes and his lip was quivering. Don't hurt me. Please, I was only hungry and wanted some food," he said. Scherzer's eyes soften and she smiles at him. "It's okay child, I'm not here to hurt you," she says, and her hands glow white and she places them on his small arms. He flinches a little from the contact but relaxes while she treats his injuries. Joe watched this from the corner of his eye and smiles. He turns his eyes back to the villagers and releases a huge amount of murderous intent on them. "What do you fools think you're doing?" he roared while they sweated heavily from the murderous intent this man was releasing. That's when one idiot civilian spoke up. "We were trying to avenge our leader buying the demon brat," he answered. Joe's eye narrowed and looked back at the boy. Then he looked at the villagers who were hoping he would understand reason and the boy. "Wow, what a bunch of fools. I see no demon. All I see are a bunch of short-minded fools. Now leave before you all," he growled in a deep dark voice while they backed away. But the demon," a Junin said, only to have 3 shuriken enter his skull and hit the ground dead. Joe was the one who threw them and his eyes glowed. "I won't tell you again. Leave while you have your limbs intact," he said in a dark tone, making them run away. Joe's eyes return to normal once they're gone and he doesn't sense any nin around. The dragon nin that were protecting Scherzer and the blonde boy relaxed and sheathed their swords. Scherzer just finished healing his legs and asked him to take off his shirt. He was reluctant at first, but he did, and a gasp escaped her mouth. "Oh my Cammy," she whispers. The boy was so skinny he could see his bones and ribs outlined. He also had cuts, bruises, burns all over. Joe and the other dragon nin saw this and couldn't help but feel sorry for the poor boy. After treating those injuries, she turns him around to heal his back and notices a red mark that was hidden under his blonde hair. She blinks in confusion and pushes it up, and her eyes widened. "I don't believe it. Kushina-sama's son has been alive this whole time. But the Sandame said that he died when Minato-kun sealed the Kyubi no Kitsune into him. He lied. That old monkey lied to her. When Kushina finds out, this village will be done for. She'll see to it personally. Joe-kun, could you come here please?" she asks her husband. Joe nods and walks over to where she and the boy are. He kneels down and looks at the back of his head, and his eyes widen in shock. "Scherzer-chan, that's," he started to say, and she nodded while her eyes became cold. That fool lied to her. How could he do this? After all Minato and our clan has done for this village. He told her he died during the sealing. Does he have any idea what he's done? When she finds out that he's alive, Konoha will be finished. She whispers to him. Joe grunted in agreement. He may be strong, but Kushina was not someone you'd want to have as an enemy or piss off. He then pulls out a scroll and hands it to her. "Get him out of those rags and have him put the clothes that are in this scroll on." He then stands up and looks at the hooded ninja. "Kenji, Aoshi, Shira," he said while three of them appeared before him on one knee. They removed their hoods, revealing two males and a female. Kenji had reddish-orange hair that was in a ponytail and violet eyes. Aoshi had shoulder-length bluish-black hair and gray-colored eyes. Shira had violet-colored hair and red eyes. "Sir," they said in unison, "you three are coming with me to the Hokage Tower. The rest of you stay with my wife, son and the boy. If anyone tries to harm the blonde boy, them," he commanded while the ones in the hooded cloaks nodded. "Let's go," he said to Kenji, Aoshi, and Shira, who nodded, and they vanished from the alley. Scherzer bites her thumb, drawing blood from it, and smears it on the scroll. The seal glows a little, and in a puff of smoke, a dark blue GI that was similar to Ryu's appeared. She then turns to the blonde child, who blinked at her confusingly. "Here, young one, put this on. You don't want get sick now, do you?" she asks in a soothing tone. The blonde nods and takes off the shorts and puts on the GI. She smiles at him and asks, "What is your name, young one?" "Naruto Uzumaki, miss," he says, and she answers, "Scherzer Hayabusa. It's a pleasure to meet you, Naruto-kun," she says. Naruto looks down at the ground, which causes her to give him a concerned look. "Are you okay, Naruto-kun?" she asked while Naruto shifted his feet nervously. "Why are you being so nice to me? Almost everyone in this village hates me, beats me, or they say I'm a monster who's innocent people," he said quietly. She frowns but places her hands in his shoulders. "You're not a monster, Naruto-kun. These people are just a bunch of fools who can't tell the difference between one and the other. Would you like to meet my son, Ryu?" she asks, and he nods. "Come on then. Let's get out of this dirty alley," she says, and gets up. She then holds out her hand to him, and he takes it, making her smile as she led him out of the place into the village. The hooded ninja follow her from behind. They notice the villagers were glaring at Naruto and calling him a demon brat, and that the Hokage should have the creature when he was born. The hooded nin twitched their fingers as they heard this. Naruto held Scherzer's hand a little tighter. She notices this and sees the looks the villagers were giving him and releases her own murderous intent at them, making the fool stop and tremble at her icy gaze. They then find themselves in the park where Ryu was practicing some hand seals the hooded dragon Nin was showing him. He saw his mother and the other Nin approaching with a blonde Nin and runs up to her. Ka-san, I finally got 3 seals down. Where's 2-san and who is he? He asked, looking at Naruto with curiosity in his eyes while said blonde was looking at him nervously. Scherzer looks down at her son and smiles. Ryu-kun, this is Naruto-kun. Naruto-kun, this is Ryu-kun, my Sochi. She answers. Ryu holds his hand out for a handshake and smiles. Nice to meet you, Naruto. I'm Ryu Hayabusa. He replies. Naruto decides to do the same and shakes Ryu's hand. It's nice to meet you, Ryu. He said with a small smile on his face. Scherzer couldn't help but smile. They've only met for a few seconds and they're already bonding. She thought while she watched Ryu lead Naruto to a sakura tree and talk. At the Hokage Tower . Hiruzen Sarutobi was sitting in his chair doing some paperwork while wondering if Naruto was doing okay. He hated the fact that he had to lie to Kushina about her son, but Naruto was a Jinchuriki of Konoha and the last Namikaze and he had to stay no matter what. It's what Minato would want, can you say retard? He continued to do his paperwork until the door was knocked off its hinges, shocking the professor, and from the other side came Joe Hayabusa along with Kenji, Aoshi, and Shira, and the man was not happy. Joe Hayabusa, what can I do for you? Hiruzen asked while the man's frown grew. You can start by explaining. He said in a low tone. Sarutobi raised an eyebrow at the dragon Nin. I'm not sure I understand your meaning, Joe-san. Explain what? He asked, only to feel murderous intent coming from the man. You can explain why the true heir of the Hayabusa is in the village being treated like a dog and why you lied to Kushina-sama about her son being dead. He yelled at the last second while his eyes became slitted and glowed. Hiruzen's eyes widened in shock and a bead of sweat fell from the side of his head. Oh no, how did he find out? I must do something or the village will lose the last Namikaze. He thought. I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking abo, he started to say but was cut off when Joe smashed the desk, leaving an imprint of his fist in it. Don't lie to me, old monkey. That boy is Kushina and Minato's son, because he had the mark of a red dragon on him and he looks just like Minato, if you take away the whisker marks. Do you have any idea what Kushina will do when I tell her the truth about her son? He says, making the old man gulp a little. Do you have any idea what the Ryu Nin, or Dragon Nin, will do when they find out that their future leader was hidden from them by the very village they've been allies with since the founding and that he's been beaten near death? They will raze this place to the ground and every single person in this village. If Kushina-sama doesn't, she'll do it herself. He yelled. Please, Joe-san, you have to understand, he's the last Namikaze in the village and his father wanted him to be recognized as a hero to the village. I can't just let you take the boy. He's a citizen of Konoha and falls under the village's jurisdiction. He said, hoping this would work but only made the man more furious. I see. Perhaps I should send a letter to the Fire Daimyo and Kushina-sama about this and let them solve the problem when they get here. I'm sure you'd love to explain to the ruler of Fire Country and to one of the most dangerous kunoichi in the world, why Konoha is going to war with an ally due to the fact that you not only interfered in foreign ninja clan affairs, but lied to said clan leader and Cage about her child's so-called demise, and kept him here to be beaten like a dog. He replied in a deep dark tone that made Sarutobi pale and inwardly sweat. We still haven't fully recovered from the Kyuubi attack and the Ryu ninja are well known and feared throughout the elemental nations. They are even hired bodyguards for the daimyo. If they remove their nin from his ranks because of our actions then we'll be finished, but Naruto is the last Namikaze of the village and we can't just give him up. What do I do? He ranted in his mind as he tried to think of an alternative. Seeing no other choice, he sighs in defeat. Very well, Joe-san. I will hand Naruto over to you. He starts to say until Joe interrupts him. And his father's inheritance and jutsus as well as the forbidden scroll that Minato created. He said, getting a shocked look from Sarutobi. I can't do that, Joe-san, because I am well aware of Iwa, but you forget that Minato left everything he owned to Kushina-sama and any children they have, and if you don't, then consider our alliance with Fire Country finished. He replied, but was getting to the point where he'll Hiruzen, who let out another sigh. Fine. Just let me get everything. He then gets up and heads to the Hokage's vault. He returns with 3 large scrolls. One contained the Namikaze clan's currency. The other one contained all the jutsu they ever created and their fighting style. And the last one was the forbidden scroll of sealing. This is everything, Joe-san. Is there anything else? He asked. No. You've done enough already. You and this village have caused nothing but trouble, and pray that I can convince Kushina-sama not to declare war on Konoha due to the stupidity of the leader and his followers. He said with anger etching off his voice. Sarutobi flinched from those words and looked down in shame while Joe and his ninjas left the tower. Hiruzen then looked at the picture frame that held Minato's picture in it. It was like he was glaring at the old man for failing to protect his son. Minato. I'm sorry I couldn't protect Naruto. He thought while looking at the destroyed door, and had the secretary send a maintenance worker to fix it. Konoha Park . Scherzer had a smile on her face when she saw Ryu showing Naruto how to perform hand seals, which he mimicked. Ryu also told him about the Hayabusa village and that it was a village on the other side of the world. She then saw her husband and his 3 nin walking towards them with 3 large scrolls. She walks over to him and looks up at her koi lover. So how did it go, Joe-kun? She asked while he smiled at her. It went well, Scherzer-chan. Naruto will be coming back with us. He won't have to stay in this godforsaken place ever again. I just hope I can convince Kushina-sama not to destroy Konoha after this. I wouldn't wish her wrath on even my worst enemy. He replied while his brow twitched at the thought of an angry Kushina. Whenever he saw her angry or pissed, he ends up seeing the form of the Shinigami hovering over her head and pointing at her victim. Scherzer giggled when she saw him shake his head and looked over her shoulder to see Ryu and Naruto doing hand seals and smiles. I see Naruto and Ryu have developed a bond already. He said while his wife looks at the two and nods. Yes, it appears so. Naruto-kun, Ryu-chan, come over here please. She spoke out and the 2 6-year-olds ran up to her. Naruto-kun, this is my husband Joe Hayabusa. He's the leader of the Hayabusa clan. She said. Naruto looked at the man and bowed. Thank you for saving me, Joe-san. He said while the leader smiles and nods. You are welcome, Naruto. He said and paused for a few minutes and asked. Naruto, how would you like to come back with us to the Hayabusa village? He asked the young boy who looked up at the man with a surprised look. You won't have to worry about being treated badly or glared at. Unlike this village, ours doesn't judge a book by its cover. You'll also be able to make friends there as well as hang out with Ryu here as long as you want. So what do you say, Naruto Uzumaki? Would you like to join our village and maybe be a ninja for the village? He asked. Naruto just looks at him in shock. He can finally be happy and be in a place where he won't get beaten or glared at. He did had few after all. He then nods while wiping away his eyes. Joe smiles at him. Okay. We have to leave now. Naruto, is there anything you need to get before we go? Joe asks while Naruto just shakes his head. Alright then. Let's go everyone. He orders and they nod. Scherzer took Naruto and Ryu's hands in hers and they leave the village. During the travel back home on the boat, Joe talked to Naruto and told him everything. About his inheritance, how his father Minato Namikaze sacrificed his life to seal the fox into him, how the old man lied to his mother saying that he died during the sealing, and that he was the true heir of the Hayabusa clan and he had a twin sister who looked like her mother. Naruto was an emotional wreck when he was told this and hated Sarutobi for lying to him whenever he asked about his family and letting those people in Konoha treat him like trash. Scherzer managed to calm the poor boy down and told him that he won't have to go through that anymore. But when he realized that he had a mother and sister, he was happy yet worried that she'd reject him. Scherzer saw this and said, Naruto-kun, I highly doubt Kushina would abandon you even if you're the container for the Kyuubi. Naruto looked at and nodded but still couldn't help but hope she was right. Then Joe spoke up. What surprises me is why she would attack the village in the first place. Kyuubi is normally neutral when it comes to human affairs and she wouldn't attack a village unless said ninja from the village provoked her into attacking or that she was being controlled or she was trying to get rid of an evil threat. Joe replied, getting a shocked look from Naruto. But I thought the Kyuubi was an evil demon. Naruto said, but Joe shook his head. I'm afraid that's not true, Naruto. Kyuubi is a spirit of nature. A guardian of the mortal realm and only appears when a great evil threatens the earth. She's also well known to the Ryu dragon, ninja, and was around to assist our ancestors in defeating the dark dragon, but that's for another time. He answers and sees a mass of land from the boat. Ah, it appears we'll be porting soon, he said as the boat heads for a dock. After the ship stopped at the docks, Joe had the 3 scrolls strapped to his back and moved forward into the forest with the dragon nin flanking him, Scherzer, Naruto and Ryu. So, Ryu, what's the Hayabusa village like? The blonde asks while Ryu thought about it and answered. Well, for one thing, it's big. We don't have a large gate that surrounds it like the other hidden villages do, because we're not a hidden village. We also have ninja that are ranked like the ones in the elements. We also use ninjutsu, taijutsu, fuinjutsu, kenjutsu, and genjutsu, but we mostly excel in stealth, espionage, assassination, and interrogation. He said. Wow. So does the village have a ninja academy? Naruto asked, and that's when Joe answers. No, we don't, Naruto. We prefer to train our ninja separately, but we do set them up in squads and a leader by their skills and not through meaningless titles like Rookie of the Year, or Kunoichi of the Year, or Dead Last, because that is insulting and ruins the way a squad cooperates. We also have a Shinobi and Civilian Council that is separate and not joined. Also, the Rukage Dragon Shadow, who your mother is, has the final say in anything. He answered while Naruto nods. When they enter the village, Naruto couldn't believe what he was seeing. The village was huge. The buildings were larger than the ones in Konoha and the streets were filled with civilians and ninja. As they walked through the village, Naruto noticed that when the civilians and shinobi looked at them, they either smiled or bowed. There was not even one glare from them. He also saw shinobi parents training their children in the ninja arts. They continued to walk until they came to a large Japanese castle that was surrounded by compounds. The place was bigger than the Hokage Tower. On top of the castle was the statue of a red dragon with golden eyes, ruby red scales, a golden underbelly, spines, claws, and horns, and it had its head raised and its maw open, revealing a row of ivory white teeth. It appeared to be roaring at the sky. Naruto said only one thing. Wow, he said, looking at the dragon while Joe chuckled. Yes, even now I can't help but be amazed by the appearance of the statue that represents our village. He said as they continued to walk into the compound district. Once they reached the Uzumaki compound, Joe dismissed the dragon nin while Scherzer took Ryu with her to the Hayabusa compound to get some rest. Joe and Naruto approached the door of the Uzumaki compound, but Naruto was a little nervous and scared. He was going to meet his mother and sister for the first time. Joe looked at Naruto, who was fidgeting, and placed a hand on the boy's shoulders to calm him down. Relax, Naruto. Your mother is a kind person and is respected and loved by everyone in the village, he said softly. Naruto lets out a sigh as Joe opens the slide door and they walk in. The inside was decorated with paintings of dragons and weapons. There were also statues of dragons lined up through the hallways. As they walked through the hallways, they came to a stop at a door that had a red swirl on one side and a dragon on the other. Naruto, get behind me. I want to surprise your mother, he whispered to him. He nods and gets behind him as he knocks on the door carefully. Enter. A voice said that Naruto thought sounded like an angel. Joe then opens the door and enters the room with Naruto behind him. It appeared to be a meditation room since it was plain but did have plant life and a small water fountain in it. In the middle of the room was a woman who seemed to be 5 feet 8. She had long flowing red hair, ivory-colored skin, and the figure of a goddess. She was wearing a crimson-colored ninja training gi with a coiling golden dragon on the back. She was sitting in a lotus position with her back turned to Joe. Kushina-sama, Joe said with a bow, making the woman sigh. Joe, how many times do I have to tell you to only call me that during meetings? She asks without looking at him while he chuckles. Old habits die hard, Kushina, he says with a smile, but then gets serious. Kushina, I have some very important news to tell you, and it's regarding your son, he said, causing Kushina's eyes to open up instantly. She then gets up and looks at Joe with a serious look. Joe, we both know that my Sochi died along with Minato Koi, so why would you bring this subject up knowing how I feel about it? She asks with eyes full of sorrow. Because he didn't die with his father, Kushina. Sarutobi lied to you and he's been alive living in that village for the last 6 years, he answered, saying village with venom in his voice. Kushina's eyes were wide and her mouth was open, but no words came out of it. I took him out of the village and also got the clan scrolls that belong to Minato, including the one that contains the Hiraishin and the forbidden scroll that he created, he says, pulling the 3 scrolls from his back and placed them on the floor. Your son is right behind me too. Come on out, Naruto, he said, and a blonde 6-year-old who looked like a miniature version of Minato walked out in front of Joe and looked up at his mother. Kushina looked down at Naruto while her eyes became moist and tears formed in her eyes. Naru-chan, she replied while Naruto smiled at her and walked up to Kushina, grabbing her hand. Ka-san, was all he could say because she scooped him up in her arms and hugged him to her body while sobbing uncontrollably. My baby's still alive. I'm so sorry, Naru-chan. I'm so sorry for not looking for you. Please forgive me, she said as she held even closer. Naruto wrapped his arms around his mother's neck and laid his head on her chest while he cried silently. Kushina was crying tears of joy, muttering, "My baby," over and over. Joe smiled at the scene and left Kushina and her son alone so that they could catch up. After that little scene, Kushina wipes her tears away with her arm and takes a good look at her son. You look just like your father, Naru-chan, she said while Naruto blushed and then looked at her. Ka-san, Joe-san said that the Kyuubi was sealed into me by Two-san but told me that he wasn't an evil demon. Why did he attack Konoha then? Naruto asked. He asked while Kushina frowned and thought about it. Honestly, Sochi, I don't know. Kyuubi is a spirit of nature and wouldn't attack the village unless he had a reason to. So tell me, how was your life in Konoha for the last 6 years? She asked but noticed the frown on his face and he started to tell her everything. How the adults would beat him on his birthday and made their children stay away from him, how he had to eat out of garbage cans and only eat at a ramen stand, and that he was overcharged for clothes and food and that he was kicked out of the orphanage when he was 4. To say Kushina was pissed would be an understatement. She was beyond livid or pissed. Her eyes went from blue to a golden yellowish-orange color with a tint of red on them, and her pupils became slitted. She growled, baring her teeth, and the top ones extended into fangs. Those bastards. All them. I'll raze that damn village to the ground and rip Sarutobi apart with my bare hands. The Rukage said in a dark tone that'll make Orochimaru run away crying like a little girl. Naruto noticed this and placed a hand on her cheek to try and calm her down. Don't let them get to you, Ka-san. They're not worth it. They didn't honor To-san's dying wish. Naruto said, which caused Kushina to calm down and her eyes and teeth returned to normal and looked down at her son, who smiled at her. She does the same but sighs. You're right, Naru-chan, they're not. I'm sorry if I scared you, she said while she sat down Indian style with her son on her lap. Scared me? That was cool what you did. Will I be able to do that? He asked with a huge smile on his face. Kushina couldn't help but laugh at her son. Yeah, you will once you activated our family's Kekkei Genkei, bloodline limit, she said, getting a confused look from her son. Kekka what? He asked while she had to hold in a laugh by biting her lower lip as Naruto blinked a few times and tilted his head to the left. Kawaii. He looks so cute when he's confused, she squealed in her mind as a chibi form of her jumped up and down squealing. Kushina was about to say something, but the door opened and a 6-year-old girl with red hair and an ivory complexion like her mother walked in. She also had blue eyes and wore a red gi like her mother's. She saw her mother holding a blonde boy in her arms and blinked in confusion. Ka-san, who is that boy you're holding? The red-headed girl asked. Kushina and Naruto looked at her and Naruto's eyes widened. That was his twin sister and she looked just like Kushina. Kushina smiled and motioned her to come over, and she did while staring at the blonde boy. Tasuki-chan, this is Naruto, your twin brother. He's been alive this whole time and was brought back by Joe, she replied. Suki's eyes went wide when she saw her brother, who was rubbing the back of his head nervously. She went from shock to having a huge grin on her face. Naruto ni. She squealed and tackled her brother and mother to the ground. Kushina managed to get back up only to see Tasuki hugging or squeezing her older twin, who went from his tan color to blue. Nei-chan. I can't breathe, he struggled to say while Kushina giggled and then laughed at her children. Hey everyone, I'm back with another chapter for Naruto, Path of the Dragon Shinobi. Just so you know, once the 3rd chapter is done, there will be a time skip where Naruto, Ryu, and the others are 14, and then it'll start off at the Wave Arc. There will be flashback chapters in the story, so don't worry, I'll be describing Naruto's training during those chapters by adding new lines. As you know, I gained permission from Namikaze-09 to adopted his story and revised it. I will made my own version by adding Sakura for the harem. As the answer from Tensa Zanjetsu 102, is Naruto's older brother. I check a few translations. Older brother. Ni-san. Brother. Ni-chan. Older sister. Nei-san. Sister. Nei-chan. So I will do my thing. So Naruto was born first and Tasuki second. Naruto. Path of the Dragon Shinobi, rewrite and adoption. Normal speaking. People thinking. Italic. Animal speaking. Underline. Animal speaking. Underline. Italic. Demon or summon speaking. Bold. Demon or summons thinking. Bold. Italic. Dragon sword thinking. Dark dragon sword thinking. Disclaimer. I don't own Naruto or Ninja Gaiden because if I did, I'd be staying my home for drinking coffee. Anyway, back to the story. I owned the weapons and jutsu from few of my stories I created, so back off lawyers. Anyway, on with the story. Chapter 2. Dragons, Foxes, and Training. Story starts. The sun's rays shined down on Naruto's face, which caused him to squint a few times. He turned in his bed and blinked a few times before opening his eyes. He woke up to see that he was in a large room that had different kinds of things in it. There were some pictures of his mother and father when they got married and some where they were teenagers. There were some of his mother and her side of the family in Whirlpool before it was destroyed, even Konoha dishonored the Uzumaki clan. On the walls were paintings of different colored dragons, each shooting different colored fire or another element. There were also statues of golden dragons lining up the walls. He also had toys and plastic weapons like shuriken, kunai, and ninjatus that were in a black wooden box, and next to his bed was a small dresser drawer that had a stuffed red dragon on it. Naruto started to rubbing the sleep out of his eyes and went to his closet. It was in a sense huge, having not only training gi and sandals but other things like different colored shirts, shorts, pants and shoes he's never seen before. Wow, I can't believe that this is all my stuff, he said, admitted, until he was tackled to the by a red blur. They both tumble on the ground for a while until they finally came to a stop with Tasuki sitting on top of Naruto, grinning. She then got up and started to hug the life out of her twin brother. "Morning Naruto ni," she said while Naruto was struggling to breathe. "See, can't breath, Tasuki-chan," he said, trying to get out of her vice grip. Tasuki lets go while Naruto gains his breath back. "Hee. Sorry ni-san. I'm just happy to have my big brother with me," she said, and hugs Naruto normally, who smiles and returns the hug. "Is Ka-san still asleep?" Naruto asked Tasuki, who she nodded. "Come on. Let's go wake her up," she says, grabbing Naruto's arm and leads him out of the room and to Kushina's. Kushina was in her room sleeping when Naruto and Tasuki sneak in quietly. Tasuki told Naruto to go to the other side while she went to the other. She sees her mother, who was snoring quietly while drool was hanging out of her mouth. Lol. No wondered where did Naruto didn't sleep properly because of the snoring. Well, maybe. Tasuki put her hand over her mouth to hold in the giggle. She then climbs the bed, as does Naruto. They look at each other and grin. They both breathe air into their lungs and pause for a while and then yelled out, "Ka-san." Kushina instantly bolts up with her eyes open wide and screams. As she blinks for a while and looks down to see her son and daughter grinning at her. She then smiles at them and pulls them onto her lap. "How are my Kodomo children are doing this morning?" she asked. "Fine," they replied at the same time while she kisses them both on the forehead. She then looks at the clock and sighs. It was 10:30 a.m. So she gets up with her children in her arms. "Come on, you two. Once we eat breakfast, I'm gonna take you two over to Scherzer's because I have a busy schedule today," she says while walking out the room with them. "Ka-san, are you the Kage of this village?" Naruto asks her and she nods. "Yes, I am. I'm the Godime Rukage, 5th Dragon Shadow," she answered, and Naruto's mouth was opened. "So you and two-san were Kages? That is so cool," he exclaimed with a grin on his face while Tasuki grins too. "Yes, it is cool, but it's also a very tough job. I'm not only in charge of the ninja of our village, but I'm also in charge of how things operate in our village," Kushina replied with explained, but then cries inwardly. Not to mention all that paperwork. How did Minato-kun get it done so fast? Then her chibi form ranted, crying anime tears while doing mountain loads of paperwork. Meanwhile, Kushina's eyebrow twitched, but it was noticed by Tasuki, who giggled. Naruto saw this and asked, "What's so funny, Tasuki-chan?" He asked his Imouto with wonder, while his sister points to Kushina. Ka-san's eyebrow was twitching, meaning she's going nuts about paperwork, but doesn't show it. Tasuki explained while Naruto blinks. "Is it that bad?" Naruto asked while Suki's grin grew about their mothers are Kage's worst nightmare and arch nemesis of all Kages. She almost did Joe Oji uncle when he accidentally slammed the door. causing all the paperwork that she finished to scatter all over her office, and it took 15 Anbu to restrain her. She answered while Kushina blushed in embarrassment. If only I can find a jutsu that finishes the paperwork. Kushina mumbles while Naruto rubs her back. Don't worry, Ka-san. I'll help you to find a way to get rid of that evil paperwork. Naruto says while he puffs his chest out, getting a light laugh from his mom. If you do that for me, Sochi, then I'll be forever in your debt. She said, kissing the top of his head. Ka-san. Naruto whined while she and Tasuki laugh at him. So once they had breakfast, they got changed and Kushina, Naruto, and Tasuki were heading for the Hayabusa compound. Naruto wore a dark blue long-sleeved kimono and hakama pants that had white dragons and white flames licking the bottom of the hamaka pants and the sleeves. He also wore dark blue socks and black sandals. Tasuki was wearing a red kimono with sakura petals and blue birds on them. She also wore white socks and red sandals. Kushina was wearing her cage robes, which were white and black, and wore a cage hat that was also black and white and had the kanji long dragon on the front under them. She wore a red and black ninja outfit with armed guards and a black collared flak jacket with black sandals. She was wearing the cage hat on her head so that the sun wouldn't get in her eyes, and she was holding both her son and daughter's hands while being flanked by 4 Anbu who were wearing dragon masks with markings on them, but the markings were different colors. The captain wore a hooded white cloak that had a black dragon on the back, while the subordinates wore black cloaks with white dragons on them. Under the cloaks they wore dark blue uniforms, and strapped to their backs were katanas. As they walked through the village, Naruto saw the civilians and Shinobi either smiling or bowing to Kushina and her children when they walked by. Kushina smiled and waved at the civilians and Shinobi, as did Tasuki and Naruto. Naruto knew they respected him and his family because of their clan and their mother being the Kage, but he wanted to earn their respect just like his mother and father did. When they reached the compound, guarding the gates were 2 ninja wearing masks that covered half of their faces, black Junin shirts and pants, dark blue collared flak jackets, and black headbands with the symbol of a dragon on them. They noticed Kushina, her children, and the dragon Anbu coming towards the compound. When they stopped at the gate, the 2 guards bowed. Greetings, Rukage-sama. What brings you to the Hayabusa compound? One guard asked while she smiled. You may raise your heads, Jonins. I'm just here to drop my children off since I'll be really busy today. Is Scherzer and Ryu-chan is here? She asked while they raised their heads. Yes, they are here. Joe-sama already left for the meeting you called. You also said, children, Rukage-sama. I could have sworn you had only Tasuki-san. The second guard asks while making Kushina sigh about it. To make a long story short, I just found out that my son was still alive for the last 6 years. Everything else will be explained at the meeting. Kushina answered while the guards look at Naruto for a while and then back at Kushina. We understand, Rukage-sama. Would you like for us to escort your children into the compound? First guard asked, getting a nod from their leader. Yes, I must be going now. The Rukage said and kneeled down to hug her children. Stay on your best behavior, you two. I'll see you both later. Naruto and Tasuki hug her back. Okay, Ka-san, come on, Naruto ni. Tasuki said and led Naruto past the gate and towards the compound while one of the guards walked behind them. Kushina got back up and then looked at the Anbu. Let's go, she said in an authority tone while they nod and the 5 of them shunshin to the Dragon Tower. Meanwhile, the guard escorted them into the compound, which was similar to theirs but was a little smaller. As they walked through the compound, they saw Scherzer teaching Ryu some new hand seals and how to chant incantations. The guard did a small cough, getting their attention, and they see Naruto and Tasuki grinning. Scherzer motions the guard to leave, who nods and shushens away. Tasuki runs over to Scherzer and hugs her, while she smiles and returns it. Hi Scherzer Obasan. Tasuki greet while the woman laughs lightly as they release each other. Hello Tasuki-chan. She greet back and notice Naruto who looked nervous, making her smile grow. Don't be shy Naruto-kun, come give me a hug. She insisted in a sweet tone. Naruto walks over to her with a small blush on his face and she gives him a hug. Tasuki sees Ryu who had a small blush on his face ran over to Ryu and hugged him, making the young dragon turn red from the contact. Scherzer releases Naruto who was smiling at her and she looks over to see Ryu red from Suki's hug. Ah, how cute. Ryu's already formed a crush on Tasuki. I can't wait till he's older. The teasing that I'll do to him and her will be priceless. She thought while Naruto saw this and asked. Anyo-sa, Scherzer Obasan, why is Ryu red? Is he sick or something? Scherzer looks at the confused look on his face and couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Just like his father, as well as with Kushina. Ryu's fine Naruto. He's just a little embarrassed from the hug Tasuki-chan gave him. She answered while Naruto looked at Tasuki who was leading Ryu out their backyard by the hand while Ryu was redder than a tomato. So, he's shy? Naruto asked as they went to join them while Scherzer nods. You could say that. Now let's go join your sister and Ryu. Scherzer replies. Dragon Tower Council Chambers Kushina was now sitting in a chair in the council chamber. On her right was Joe Hayabusa and on her left was the captain commander, Sotaicho, of the Dragon Anbu, Arashi Kazama. He was 5 feet 11 and wore his mask on the side of his face revealing his face. His eyes were light gray and he had jet black hair that stopped to his shoulders. There were also the elders who gave Kushina suggestive advice, and the Shinobi and Civilian Council. Rukage-sama, is there a reason why you summoned us here? One of the elders asked. Kushina looks at him and nods. Yes there is, and the reason why I summoned you all here is because the true heir of the Dragon Clan has returned. She answered with announced getting shocked looks from all of them when one of the civilians spoke up. Pardon me for saying this Rukage-sama. But I thought your daughter was the true heir. The civilian merchant asked and Joe spoke up. That would have been the case however when me and my group went to Konoha to get more supplies we found her firstborn being beaten by civilians and shinobi. He answered. Kushina had to suppress the murderous intent she wanted to release after hearing that while the members of the council's eyes widen. Would you be so kind as to start from the beginning, Joe-san? A shinobi member asked and he did. After hearing the story to say they were pissed would be an understatement. That was when one of the shinobi members spoke up. Those bastards. How dare they? Yeah, who does that fool of a Cage think he is lying to our leader about her son's so-called demise? Lying to a Cage, interfering in a foreign clan's affairs, and denying the boy his true inheritance. Those actions are considered acts of war. After all the things our village has done to help them they do this. Something must be done and they must pay for this. Another elder yelled out. This kept on for 10 more minutes until Kushina slammed her fist into the desk. Silence. She roared and they went quiet. She then breathes out a sigh and starts talking. I understand how you all feel. Believe me when I say that I too am pissed at what Konoha has done to my family and I assure you Konoha will pay for their actions. She stated, before continue. But the question is how? I will leave that up to you because right now, I'm tempted to go to that village personally and raze it to the ground. As her eyes flashed a golden yellow color which made everyone in the tower including the hidden Anbu shivered. That's when one of the business members spoke up. I suggest we punish them financially by increasing the amount of exports and technology we send to them and the other villages in Fire Country and double their profits. He said while tilting his glasses up with his index finger. Kushina nodded at his request and looks around. Anyone else has suggestions? She asked and a shinobi member who was a kunoichi spoke up. The high-ranking missions they trade for ours should be temporarily null and voided until you decide to drop it. The same with the bodyguards for the fire daimyo, stating that he can only request a minimum amount of our ninja, and if he asks, tell him to have Konoha explain. I'm sure they would be more than happy to explain why half of his bodyguards are being sent back to us, and I'm positive our daimyo would agree to your reasons since you two are good friends, Rukage-sama, and will demand why Konoha lied to you about your son. She replied with a sick smile on her face. Another shinobi member looked at her with wide eyes. Akira, that is so evil and underhanded, I like it. He said with a grin on his face, and she rubbed her nose with her finger. Thanks, Kaiser. Akira replied while a dark smile appeared on Kushina's face. I like that idea too, Akira-san. Kushina says, and that's when another elder spoke up. If I may ask, Kushina-sama, since your son is one of the few survivors in your family's clan and has the dragon bloodline, wouldn't he fall under the village's CRA? He asked before continue with explanation. I mean, it's a fact that you can't have any more children due to the fact that you had some complications when giving birth to your daughter and son. While Kushina looks at him. We're not trying to force him into any marriages or anything like that, but since he is the only male in the village who possesses the true dragon bloodline, he falls under that law. No one will interfere with who he wants in the clan. I only request that he has at least 3 or more future wives before he turns 18. How does that sound? The elder asked, insisted. Kushina looks around the room and lets out a sigh and replied. Fine. I will agree with this, but Naruto gets to choose his own wives. How does that sound? Kushina asks and gets a nod from them. Before she add in her finishing sentence. But, I did found one. Before Naru-chan told me about her. All the council was curious, as one of them spoke. So, who is she? Well, a daughter of a friend of mine in Konoha. Kushina answered. That made the council surprised. Who? Kushina smiled for the answer. She is the first friend Naru-chan made, before her mother took her away from him for protection before I told him. And even we keep in touch for ourselves to make sure. Until Joe shocked and surprising he started to remember the conversation. Kushina-sama, you mean, are you talking about? Yup. She is. Kushina replied, had her smile more. So during the rest of the meeting they discussed about the Kyuubi who was sealed inside her son and why she attacked Konoha. After that, Kushina had an ambassador along with 5 Anbu sent to Konoha to deal with the trade and business deals and informed the Dragon Daimyo about her son still being alive and what Konoha has done to him. Needless to say, the man was not happy and said that he would be informing the Fire Daimyo about this and sending back most of the dragon nin he hired as bodyguards sent back into the Hayabusa village ninjas ranks to teach the country a lesson on what happens when they mess with the Dragon Lord's family. Naruto got a chance to visit the man and his family, and the daimyo couldn't help but be impressed with Naruto's strong will. He would definitely become a great dragon ninja in the future. Uzumaki compound . It was night and Naruto was currently in his bed asleep. Naruto felt a small pull into his mind and found himself in front of a large cage which had a paper on it that said seal. Naruto walked up to it, and when he was close enough he heard an angelic voice. Hello Kit. The voice said, which made Naruto freak out. Kyuubi. The blonde Namikaze asks and saw a pair of red-slitted eyes appear from the other side of the cage. When the figure revealed itself, Naruto couldn't help but blush at the sight. She was 5 feet 8 and wore a red kimono that hugged her hourglass figure and had flawless ivory skin that gave her the appearance of a goddess. She wore ruby red lipstick on her lips and her hair was crimson and stopped to her mid-back. Canines jutted from her upper lip and she wore ruby red nail polish on her nails and toenails. What really shocked him was the fox ears on her head and 9 red tails that swayed behind her. Naruto just walked closer to her and looked up at her angelic face. She looks down at him and couldn't help but see how cute he was. She knelt down to meet his eye level and smiled. Hello, Kit. We finally meet. I'm sorry if I haven't contacted you sooner, but I had just woken up after being sealed into you and I saw what your life was like for the past 6 years, and I have to say that I'm sorry for what has happened to you. No one should have to suffer like you did, and I hope that you can forgive me, she said in a downcast voice. Naruto looked at her and saw the sorrow she had in her eyes. He reached his hands out at the cage and grabs her right hand. She looks up at him with a surprised expression on her face as he rubs his hands into hers. It's okay, Q. I know you must have had a reason for attacking the village, and I know you're not a bloodthirsty demon who destroys everything, he said while she pulls him into the cage and hugs him. Thanks, Kit. But you call me Kurumi, and yes, I did have a reason for attacking your village. You see, I sensed an evil presence that was very powerful. I don't exactly know its true location, but while I was searching for it, a man wearing an orange mask and a cloak with red clouds on it used the power of his eyes, which were red with 3 tomos on it, to cast a powerful genjutsu on me, which caused me to go berserk and attack the closest thing that was in my sight. That was your village, or former village. Your father, the 4th Hokage, used the Shiki Fuin, Dead Reaper seal, on me and sealed me into you. I've been in a deep sleep for the past 6 years and woke up when I felt my Yukai healing your body, she explained while Naruto digested the information into his brain. I see. Say, Ka-san said that I had a bloodline based on the dragons. What does that mean? He asked. Kyuubi thought about it for a while and then looked at him. Well, Kit, that is true, but it won't activate until you turn 7. You have 3 forms of this bloodline, that is body, chakra, and sight. Your body and sight form will come first, and the year after that your chakra form will appear. She snaps her fingers and a statue of a dragon appears. That, Kit, is the form of your bloodline. When you gain all 3 forms, you'll be half human and half dragon, meaning your speed, strength, stamina, 5 senses, and intellect will increase when you get older and you stop aging at the age of 20. I'll explain the rest when you're older. Now off you go, Kit. You have to get some sleep, she says, and he is pushed out of his mind. Naruto smiles and snuggles into his pillow. Good night, Kurumi Nichan, he whispers to himself, and hear a good night, Kit, from the fox. The next day Naruto was eating bacon, eggs, and pancakes with his mother and sister. They kept eating until Naruto spoke up. Hey Ka-san. Yes Sochi, what is it? Kushina asked. I just gotta talk to the Kyuubi last night. The blonde answers and she looks up at him. Really? What did you talk about? She asked curiously and listened to her son explain everything. After that, she stopped eating and had a thoughtful expression on her face. I see. So, she was searching for an evil presence that was somewhere near Konoha but ended up being put into a powerful genjutsu by a masked man wearing a cloak with red clouds on them and had red eyes with 3 spinning tomos in them. Sounds like the Sharingan, copy wheel eye. It figures that the Uchiha clan would be behind this, she thought while Tasuki and Naruto looked at her and she looked back at them. Listen up, you two. I'll be training you after breakfast. Joe and Ryu will be joining us, Kushina said while the servants came and removed the dishes from the table. Then she gets up and they follow her to the training dojo. She goes into a closet and pulls out 2 training gis. One was red while the other was dark blue. She hands the red one to Tasuki and the other to Naruto as dark blue. Go and put those on, and meet me outside the compound, she said while they leave the dojo. Naruto and Tasuki were out of the compound to see Kushina wearing her red training gi, Joe was wearing a white gi and Ryu was wearing black. Alright, now that Naruto and Tasuki are here, we'll start out by doing 5 laps around the village and after that we'll take a 5-minute break for water. Once we're done with that, we'll go to the wilderness and practice on stealth and hand-to-hand combat. You'll be learning the katas from our clan's fighting style. Naruto, I'll help you with them since Tasuki already knows most of them. She said, getting a nod from her son. When we do that for 2 hours, we'll take a lunch break which will consist of vegetables, fruit, and meat. Next, we'll be doing weapons training, and chakra control. You'll learn how to climb trees without using your hands, water walking, and kunai balancing. Once that is finished, we'll head back to the compound and you'll start on your studies, meaning you'll be learning geography, math, science, and history. By next year, you'll be learning the basics on the human anatomy, how to make your own medicines with herbs and other plants, and you'll be doing some survival training afterwards. She says and pulls a scroll out of her GI and unrolls it. And unseal a pair of ankle and arm weights via poof in front of Ryu, Tasuki and Naruto. Put those on and keep them on, so that you can get used to the weight. Kushina orders and they do that. Okay, are you all ready? They nod for understanding. Good. Naruto stick with Ryu and Tasuki since they know their way around the village. Hi Ka-san. Naruto says and they run off with Ryu taking the lead. The sun was rising over the mountain and Naruto, Ryu, and Tasuki were returning back to the compound with a sweaty Naruto carrying a panting Tasuki on his back. Kushina saw this and ran up to her children while Joe approached Ryu whose GI was soaked in sweat. Joe gave him a white towel and a glass of water which Ryu took and gulped down and then took the towel and wiped the sweat and dirt off his face and hair. Are you okay, Tasuki-chan? Kushina asked as she removes her daughter from Naruto's back and sets her down and gives her a glass of water. Tasuki nods and gulps the cool liquid down. Kushina then gives Naruto one and he drinks it also. After the 5-minute break, Kushina takes Naruto to one of the sparring mats while Joe takes Ryu and Tasuki to the other sparring mat. Okay Sochi, this is a fighting style that's been in our clan since the founding of the villages. It's an ancient and powerful style that only the Uzumaki and the Hayabusa clan can use. It is called the Tenken no Ryujin, Heavenly Fist of the Dragon God. Kushina begun to explain. The Tenken no Ryujin has 4 forms. The first form is based on evasion and counter-attacking. It's basically a defensive style where you use your opponent's strength against them and is used to disable and not. Grapple and submission holds are used in it as well as palm strikes. High-level reflexes and senses are needed for it to work. We also call it the Hisho Ryu, Soaring Dragon. The second form is based on breaking the opponent's bones and causing external damage. Power and speed are needed for it to work and it too disables but rarely unless you go for the neck bone, nose cartilage, skull, or backbone which is also the spinal cord. The knees, elbows, fists, and feet are used in this form and it's called the Kibatsu Ryu, Striking Dragon. The third one is the most deadly form of the Tenken no Ryujin. It's an assassination form that is based on the opponents by striking any of the 8 vital parts of the human body. They are the lungs, liver, jugular vein, clavicle vein, brain, kidneys, spinal cord, and heart. It can cause both internal and external damage to the person and also shatter bone and destroy internal organs in an instant. It's called the Satsujin no Ryu, Murderous Dragon. The final and most powerful form is called Daiguren no Ryujin, Great Crimson Lotus of the Dragon God. It is a combination of the first 3 forms put into one and only someone who has mastered every form can use it. She finished explaining. Have you mastered every form, Ka-san? Naruto asked while she nods. Yes, I have. I was 18 by the time I fully mastered it. She said, getting an awe look from her son. Now we'll begin with the Hisho Ryu and Kibatsu Ryu. I want you to mock my form and movements. She said and performs the katas for the Hisho Ryu. Naruto watched and copies her movements. Remember Sochi. This is a push and pull style. Keep your muscles relaxed and your senses calm, and your breathing steady. You want your movements and energy to flow when you're fighting. She says while pulling her arms and fists back and then pushing them forward into a double palm strike, and Naruto does the same. Like a river? He asked while his mother nods. Yes Sochi, like river. Now I'm gonna make my movements a little faster and I want you to try to keep up. She says, getting a nod from her son, and they increase the speed of their movements. Kushina, however, couldn't help but be impressed with how fast her son was improving. Incredible. He's only seen the first form for only a couple of seconds and he already understands its principles. It took Tasuki 2 days to understand it. If only you were here, Minato-kun. You'd be proud of both of your children. She felt impressed about her son's great knowledge. Tasuki, Ryu, and Joe were watching this and couldn't help but be amazed. Tasuki was happy, but was a little jealous at her brother. He understands it in only a few seconds while it took me 2 days. She commented with a pout while Joe chuckles. No need to be jealous, Tasuki-chan. It's probably his way of learning. The white dragon replies while Ryu nods. I agreed, even though it took me 4 days to understand the first form. Ryu said in a joking manner while Tasuki playfully punches him in the shoulder. Quiet you, she says while he rubs his shoulder. They trained like this for the rest of the week and Naruto starts to improve until he was at Suki's and Ryu's level and starts to spar with them. Kushina was very proud of how well they were progressing and couldn't help but think about how strong they will become when they're older. Only time will tell. 2 years has passed since Naruto reunited with his mother and twin sister. He's also become good friends with Ryu. They would always talk about being the strongest ninja in their village and would practice their katas in the Uzumaki dojo. Kushina helped Naruto improve on his writing, math, geography, and history. They knew both tree walking and water walking and were also good with kunai and shuriken and knew a few C-ranked jutsu that Kushina and Joe taught them. They also learned the basic sword katas for the hidden Mitsurugi and know the basic forms of the Tenken no Ryujin. They're also learning archery, and how to use other weapons like the bow staff, kusarigama, scythe, and other weapons. I will had update the hidden Mitsurugi from one of my favorite stories. Right now the three were in the backyard practicing their shuriken and kunai throwing on a dummy who was the target. Joe was watching their progress while Kushina was at the tower working on some paperwork. When word got out to the villagers that Kushina's son was still alive and how he was treated in Konoha, they were furious and demanded retribution from Konoha. Some even wanted to declare war on the village of Konoha, but Kushina informed them that Konoha will be paying for their actions and that she and the daimyo will be dealing with this. While Joe was watching this, an Anbu with a black dragon mask on appeared kneeling behind the man. What is it, Anbu? Joe asked and the Anbu looked up. Sir, the Rukage sent me here to tell you that Ayame-san and her daughters are here. Also Scherzer-san has brought over Kurha and Momiji. He says, and Joe looks over his shoulder at him. Let them in. He approved, getting a hi from the Anbu who shuns away. Tasuki decided to take a small break while watching Ryu and Naruto continue to throw kunai and shuriken at the practice dummy. They then ran out of shuriken to throw and looked at the dummy. Looks like we're tied again, Ryu. Naruto said and Ryu nods. Seeing the results that all targets were tie. It seems so. Ryu answers while they pull their throwing weapons out of the dummy. Tasuki sighed for seeing her brother and Ryu for the challenge and gets up. After all, they seems their accuracy is 100% or less hit the target. Are you two done showing off? She asked with an annoyed tone, while the two ninja in training rubbing the back of their heads sheepishly while Tasuki had her arms folded and was tapping her foot on the ground. Yes, we're done, Tasuki, so you can stop complaining. Naruto said in a whiny tone and had to move sideways from a punch his Imouto tried to deliver to the side of his head, and he tripped her foot, making her stumble and hit the ground. Tsuki got up and rubbed her nose and glared at Naruto, who gave her a raspberry, and a tick mark appeared on her face. She was about to charge until Ryu had her in a full Nelson or strangle and kept her from trying to attack Naruto, who was making faces at her. "I'm gonna kick your butt, Ni-san," Tsuki exclaimed while her legs flail in the air. Ryu was struggling to keep her at bay until he saw a wasp which landed on his nose and he turned pale. "Gah, a wasp. I hate wasps," he cried out and released Tsuki while running around, waving his arms and hands around frantically while the wasp got off his nose and flew away. Tsuki realized she was free and grinned evilly at her brother, who was now sweating bullets. She then started to crack her knuckles, which caused Naruto to take a few steps back. And then he bolted off with Tsuki on his tail. "Come back here, Naruto, and take your beating like a man," she yelled while Naruto yelled back. "I'm only 8, you dumb redhead. What? I'm gonna get you. For that I'm gonna knock you into next week," she cried out while Ryu was watching the yellow and red blur run around the practice field sighing. Joe, who was watching, sweat dropped at the scene. "They're definitely Kushina's kids, alright," he mumbled, and then saw Naruto, who was dodging her wild punches and kicks while grinning at her. "Hold still, Baka, so I can hit you," she screamed out while Ryu sighed. "At times like these, I'm glad that I'm the only child," he mumbles to himself. Tsuki tried to punch Naruto again, but he vanishes, shocking her, and appeared behind her. Before she could do anything, Naruto started to tickle her sides, causing her to cry out in laughter. "Ha ha 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 ha. Ni-san, stop. Ha 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 ha, I ha ha, give ha ha up," she cried out while she continued to laugh out. Naruto stopped so that she could breathe and glared at Naruto, who just smiles at her, and she ruffles his hair. "Tsuki, don't do that," he cried while she grins. "That's for calling me a dumb redhead. You do know that Ka-san is a redhead too, right?" she asked with reason and made Naruto paled and laughed nervously. While that was happening, 5 figures appeared from the back of the compound. They were Ayame, Scherzer, Ayane, Kurha, and Momiji. Ayane was an 8-year-old girl with purple hair that stopped near her neck and also had ruby red eyes. She was also wearing a purple ninja gi with butterflies on them. Kurha was 10 years old. She had black hair that was tied into a ponytail, brown eyes, and wore what looked like a white and red shrine maiden outfit. Momiji was 8 and also had long black hair that is tied into a ponytail which started on the top of her head. She had clear hazel brown eyes and wore a white and red ninja gi. Ayame was wearing a white and blue kimono and had long brown hair and light ruby eyes. Scherzer was holding both Momiji's and Kurha's hands while Ayane was holding her mother's hand as they approached the heirs and heiress. "Joe-kun," Scherzer calls out. The white dragon turns around to see Scherzer with the other females walking towards them. Naruto, Tsuki, and Ryu make their way towards Joe and the others and stop next to the man. Tsuki sees Momiji and Kurha and waves while they do the same. Ayane was hiding behind Ayame, who was sighing. "Hi Tsuki," Momiji says, but then notices the blonde, and asked, "Who's that Tsuki?" That blinks Tsuki about her question and looks at her brother and shrugs. "Oh, it's just my baka of a brother," she says while Naruto face faults, and then gets up glaring at his Imouto. Both sisters' eyes widen when they see the blonde, who just laughs nervously and walks towards them. Hi, I'm Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze," he greeted, and they bowed their heads before the true heir of the Hayabusa clan. Naruto blinks at them and then speaks up. You two don't have to bow to me." They then look up at Naruto with shocked expressions on their faces. But Naruto-sama, you're the true heir to the Hayabusa clan. It would be disrespectful of us to not. Kurha insisted only for Naruto to interrupt her. Ma, you don't have to be so formal. I'm just a kid like you two are. And to me, respect is earned, not given. He says while placing both his arms behind his head. The girls just stare at him when he says those words. Aside from that, I would like us to be friends. Naruto said, grinning while their faces return to normal and they smile at Naruto, who holds his hands out for them to shake, which they did. As a tint of pink appeared on Momiji's face though. After shaking their hands, the sisters went to go talk with Ryu and Tasuki. Scherzer walks over to Joe and kisses him on the cheek. Ryu sticks his tongue out in disgust and turns his head away from them. Naruto looks at the other woman, who smiles at him as he walks over to her and bows. Hello. I'm Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Ayame bows back and speaks. Hello Naruto-kun, I'm Ayame Tenshin. Naruto smiles back but then notices a tint of purple hair peeking out and then hides behind Ayame again. Naruto said as he leans over to the right. Ayame notices this and giggles. Oh, where are my manner? I haven't introduced you to my daughter. Come on out, Ayane-chan. There's no need to be afraid, she said with a calming and soothing tone. The girl then walks around slowly and appears in Naruto's line of vision. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun. Ayane-chan is just a little shy, she said while Naruto nods at her. He approaches the timid girl and holds his hand out. Hi Ayane-chan. Want to be friends? Naruto asked, and she looks up at his grinning face and a small smile appears on her face. Sure, she says in an almost quiet tone. When she takes his hand, he takes her towards the others. Ayame saw this and she was happy that her daughter made a friend, but was sad due to the fact that she was treated like a plague in the Mugen Tenshin village and everyone there kept their children away from her. The only two in the clan that associated with her, other than Ayame, was Hayate and Kasumi. Rukage Tower Kushina was currently sitting with the daimyo of Dragon Country with two of his samurai guards flanking his left and right side. The man was by no means weak-looking, somewhat angular face and phenomenally developed physique. He had a build that would make any warrior proud, and he also wore a blue battle kimono with arm guards on his forearms. He wore a floor-length, white cloak with a red collar on it, black pants with European-styled boots, and he also had long black hair that was tied into a ponytail. Hiko Seijuro 13 from Rurouni Kenshin or Samurai X. Welcome to the Hayabusa village, Seijuro-sama. I've prayed you had a safe trip here, she asked while the man nods to her question. Yes, it was, Kushina-san. Now on to business. You stated in the letter your Anbu sent me that an important situation came up in the village, he said mature while she nods back. Hi. Do you remember when I got married to Minato Namikaze, who was the former Hokage of Konohagakure, and we were going to have twins? Kushina asks, getting a nod from the man. About the marriage years ago. Yes. I was there to witness the marriage between you two. Why? Seijuro wondered. Kushina sips a cup of green tea and continues. Well, you see, sir, when I was preparing to give birth with twins, both of them, on the other hand, the village was attacked by the Kyubi no Yoko. She finished while the man's eyes widened. Why would one of the guardians of nature attack the village? Did Konoha do something to provoke the fox? Seijuro asks and she sighs. That's what I wanted to know. Apparently, she was in Hai no Kuni searching for an evil presence that worried even her. When she was doing that, a man wearing an orange swirl mask and black cloak with red clouds on it caught her off guard and casts a powerful genjutsu on her using an eye that I believe was the Sharingan. She paused for a moment so that he could absorb the information and spoke up again. Apparently whoever did that was a member of the Uchiha clan, since only they have eyes like that. It resulted in her going into her berserk state and attacking the first thing she set her eyes on, Konoha. During that attack, my late husband found a way to seal Kyubi by summoning the Shinigami and sealing her. But the cost of summoning the god of death was your soul, so Minato-kun died during the process. Kushina said and had to hold back the tears she was feeling. But Kushina, how did he seal the Kyubi into? Seijuro asked about that, and Kushina sighs in frustration and speaks up. He sealed the Kyubi into one of our children. One whom the Sandame said he died during the process. He was the first one born, and he spent the last 6 years in that village being beaten and spat on by those ignorant, short-minded fools, and it's taking all my willpower not to declare war on that foolish old man. She said with answer in a dark tone while clenching her fists under the table, not realizing that she was slowly releasing ki, making the samurai nervous and the daimyo to raise an eyebrow. Please, calm down, Kushina, he said while she breathes in and out to subside her temper. Forgive me, Seijuro-sama. I didn't mean to, she started to say, but the man waved his hand in dismissal. Think nothing of it. So what is the name of your firstborn who was treated like that? Seijuro asked. My son, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, the true heir of the Hayabusa clan. She answered, causing the man's eyes to widen on shock. Hiruzen Sarutobi lied to me about my son's so-called demise, and let those fools in Konoha treat him like a criminal. He not only lied to a cage of another village, he interfered in a foreign clan's affair and kept the heir from the clan in a hostile environment. Pardon my language, sir, but I cannot forgive that son of a bitch for what he's done, and every civilian and ninja in the village are demanding retribution for this, and if Konoha doesn't make a response for their actions, then I have no choice but to declare war. The council has already decided to increase the prices for trade, exports, and economical goods, and I'm already prepared to send our Reunited who are working as bodyguards for the fire daimyo back to the village. She explained while Seijuro lets out a sound and rubs his chin in thought. The man looks back at her and a small smile appears on his face. I agree with those terms, Kushina. Send a message to the daimyo of Hai no Kuni stating that you, with the permission of the dragon daimyo Seijuro Hiko of Ryu no Kuni, are summoning the dragon nin that he's hired back to the Hayabusa village. I want your council to double the price for trade, exports, etc. that go to Hai no Kuni's ports. If they have a problem with it, then I'll have both the Hokage, his advisors, the fire daimyo, as well as you and your advisors come to a private summit here, and we can discuss their actions against your son. You'll have my back in this, Kushina, and personally, I believe that Konoha needs to wake up to reality, since they believe they are the strongest village. Perhaps in the elemental nations, but not here. Not to mention that nearly all of my samurai could take on a Junin to Anbu level nin. He said, declared, and Kushina smiles and bows. Thank you, Seijuro-sama. She says, and he smiles back. Think nothing of it, Kushina. Your clan and my family have been comrades since the beginning. I would like to meet your son someday. Perhaps I'll see him during the Chunin exams in a few years. Well, I must get going. I have a ton of paperwork waiting for me in my office, and if I don't deal with it, my wife will not let me hear the end of it. He says while cursing like a sailor in his mind. Kushina lets out a small laugh after hearing this. Same with me. Only Tasuki-chan will pout and berate me for not finishing it on time and not coming in for dinner early. Naruto, however, is a mystery when it comes to me and my duties. He'd just look at me and blink, then walks away. I tried bringing them both with me to show them what I do, and they fall asleep most of the day. She commented and explained with a grin on her face. Seijuro laughs at that and shakes his head that admitted. As fun as this. I have to get going, Kushina. He says while getting up and walking out the door with his samurai flanking him. Give my regards to Haruka-chan. she says, and he waves his hand back as a response. As soon as he left, Kushina pulled out a scroll and started writing in it. 3 minutes later, she seals it up and wraps a black ribbon on it and snaps her fingers. An Anbu with a black dragon mask appears and kneels before Kushina. Yes, Rukage-sama, he asked. Have this message sent via messenger hawk to the daimyo of Hai no Kuni. She said, holding the scroll out, and the Anbu gets up and takes the scroll. Hi, he says and vanishes. She looks at the clock on the wall and it says 5:30 p.m. She then takes off her cage hat and places it on a hat hanger. She then removes her robes, wearing a red and black Anbu battle suit, and walks out of her office. She sees her secretary putting some files away and speaks up. I'm leaving, Reika-chan. Take care of yourself, she said, and Reika looks up at her and smiles. You too, Rukage-sama. Kushina nods back and shunshuns out of the Dragon Tower. Meanwhile with Naruto and Ryu has it. He was chasing Naruto, trying to tag him, but the blonde was too fast. Come on, Ryu. Are you that slow? Naruto exclaimed, and Ryu growls and adds chakra to his feet to increase his speed. Naruto stops at a tree and turns around to see Ryu grinning, and he leaps at the blonde. Gotcha! He yells. Naruto leaps over Ryu flying form while the young dragon in training crashes into the tree headfirst. Naruto lands on the ground and sees Ryu's form slide down the tree. He then clutches his face in pain and glares at the grinning blonde, who takes off into the woods, and Ryu gets up chasing after the blonde. Little did they know that two shadowy figures that looked like demons were watching them. So, that blonde boy is the true heir of the Hayabusa clan, as well as the Rukage's son. Let's them along with the other children. The one on the left stated. But we must proceed with caution. The white dragon and his wife are close by. The one on the right said while the other nods and they vanish. At the compound . The girls were sitting in a circle talking while Ayame was talking with Joe and Scherzer about Ayane. I can't take her back to the Mugen Tenshin village, Joe-san. Ever since Rado attacked me and Ayane was born, everyone, even certain members of the clan, look at her with disdain, and it hurts me to see them treat her like that. Ayame said as a few tears fell from her eyes. Ayame continued. Shiden has tried to reason with the members, but they refuse to acknowledge her as an heir to the clan since she carries the blood of a traitor in her veins. The villagers even pull their children away from her because they don't want her to infect them with her taint. It's only a matter of time before one of them decides to her, and I can't let that happen. While Joe and Scherzer look shocked, Joe's face returns to normal and speaks up. I see, he said, and looks at Ayane, who was laughing with the other girls until Naruto leapt out of a bush and into the middle of the circle panting, scaring the girls. Ni-san. Tasuki cried, and Naruto was about to say something until a black blur named Ryu tackled him, and they were now rolling around the ground wrestling while the girls jumped away and watched as Naruto and Ryu were fighting dirty. Scherzer and Ayame laugh at the scene while Joe sighs and shook his head for couldn't help. That was when Kushina appeared next to Joe, wondering what's going on until she saw Ryu and Naruto glaring at each other with dirt and scratches on their faces while being held back by Momiji, Tasuki, and Ayane while Kurha tried to be the peacekeeper. Kushina sighs and Joe chuckles at this. Alright, you kids, let's go back inside. Scherzer calls out. They all look at her and nod. Naruto and Ryu were about to join in, but Kushina appeared and grabbed them by their collars. You two need to get cleaned up, she added, and they groan while being led into the bathing area. After getting cleaned up, Naruto and Ryu were in a new pair of ninja gis and headed for the living room where the other girls were, but Ayane was missing. Naruto sees Momiji and sneaks up behind her. Kurha sees Naruto behind her sister and giggles while Momiji blinks at her, wondering why her Nei-san was giggling. As she turns her head that happens to see a grinning Naruto and eeps, causing her to falls on her butt while looking at a laughing Naruto. She stands up and puffs her cheeks out and folds her arms, calling him a meanie. Naruto stops his laughter and then pulls her into a hug, causing a tint of pink to appear on her face. "I'm sorry, Momo-chan," he says and releases the hug, making her sputter and then turn red. "Don't call me that," she yelled out, only to cover her mouth in shock when she realizes that she yelled at the true heir of the Dragon Clan. Naruto just blinks at her with his hands behind his head, and then a snort escapes from his mouth and he laughs even harder. Momiji looks at the ground and pouts while Kurha laughs at her Imouto. Ma, I didn't mean to embarrass you like that, Momiji-chan, I was just teasing you," he said and pats her on the back. She looks up at him with a pout still on her face. "I want another hug," she pled and spreads her arms out for another one while doing the puppy eyes jutsu. Naruto shrugs and gives her another one while she squeals and hugs him even tighter. Kurha chuckles at this and looks at Tasuki, who was also giving Ryu the pouty look while he just sweat dropped and his right eye twitched. "I want a hug too, Ryu-kun," Tasuki insisted while his eyebrow twitched. "No." He refuses and she sticks her lip out even further. "Please," she begged and her eyes grew big, making Ryu twitch more. "Oh, for Kami's sake, she's worse than Ka-san," he thought, but then lets out a sigh of defeat and opens his arms out. "Fine," he mumbles. Tasuki then grinned and glomped Ryu and the boy's face turned blue from being hugged too tightly. He looks at Kurha, who was holding her hands over her mouth to stop from laughing. "Help me," he squeaked out. Momiji stopped hugging Naruto and went over to pry Tasuki off of Ryu. "So Kurha-chan, are you a shinobi in training?" he asked, and she shakes her head for a no. "No, I'm training to be a shrine maiden. When I'm old enough, it'll be my duty protect the Hayabusa clan's treasure," Kurha said, and he nods. "Oh, so Momo-chan is training to be a kunoichi?" Naruto asked, and she nods while said girl slumped her shoulders at being called that name again. She didn't want to be a shrine maiden like me, because she doesn't want to spend her life doing nothing. Mom tried to convince her to be one, but Momiji is stubborn like our father, Kurha explained with a grin on her face while Naruto chuckles. "I am not," Momiji yelled while Kurha just grinned at her. Naruto snickered and was about to say something until he heard someone yelling. "Don't touch me. I hate you and our clan." The voice yells, making everyone jump up. That was when a slide door opens up and Ayane was seen running out of the room she and Ayame were in and heading out the door with tear flying from her eyes. "Ayane-chan, please wait." Ayame cries out as she appears out of the room also, but her daughter was already gone. Kushina appeared, so does Joe and Scherzer. "What's going on here?" Kushina asked, wondering what happened. Ayame looks at the ground and tears form in her eyes. Ayane just ran after I told her the truth about her birth. She answers and covers her eyes with her hands so no one could see her crying. Scherzer and Joe's eyes widen while Kushina looks at them with a raised eyebrow. "Anyone care to explain this to me?" The redhead Cage asked, and Joe lets out a sigh. "Ryu," he called, getting his son attention. "You and the other kids go look for Ayane," he says, and he nods. "Hi to San." Ryu and the others leave the compound and split up to look for her. With Naruto . Naruto was currently running through the forest looking in every direction. He stopped for a while and heard sobbing. He then runs to the direction and sees Ayane sitting near a lake with her knees hugged to her body and was sobbing. Naruto walked over to her and placed a hand on her shoulder. She looked up and turned her head to see Naruto, who had a concerned look on his face. Ayane's eyes were red and puffy from crying and she looks away from him. "What's wrong, Ayane-chan?" Naruto asks her. When she doesn't say anything, Naruto walks around and kneels and watches as more tears fell from her eyes. I hate them, she mumbled. Naruto raised an eyebrow at her. Hate who? He asks, and she got up and looked at the ground. All of them. My mother, the Tenshin clan, the village, all of them. I hate them all, she screamed out while Naruto's eyes widen in shock as he stands up. Why would you hate your own family, Ayane-chan? He asked, for he wants to know. Ayane looks up at Naruto and releases a sob. She then hugs Naruto tightly while sobbing into his chest. That surprises Naruto, but he does the only thing he could think of. He hugs her back and tries to calm her down by telling her it was okay. While that was happening, a creature with a humanoid appearance and black wings with what looked like a spiked club in his right hand was sitting on top of a tree chuckling. Well, isn't that cute? The mice are cuddling. Too bad it'll be their last, he said, and leaps into the air with his club raised and comes down fast. Kyubi was resting in his mind and she suddenly felt a dark presence ascending to her vessel and the girl. Kit, jump out of the way now, she yelled. Naruto's eyes widen and he looks at the ground to see a shadow growing under them. He looks up and sees a bird-like creature coming down at them with a spiky club raised. Kuso. Shit, he says, and then he scoops Ayane up bridal style and manages to leap out of the incoming club, but the shockwave from the weapon sent them flying backwards and tumbling onto the ground. The two ninja in training groan and look up to see the creature in the crater with his club posed into a smashing position. He then chuckles darkly and stands up. It was a Tengu, a bird-like demon who are considered to be a ninja's worst enemy. So the little dragon has some skill after all. This might prove too entertaining for me, the red Tengu said as Naruto and Ayane get up and the blonde's eyes widen in shock. What the heck is that thing? Naruto asks Ayane, whose eyes were wide also, and she takes a step back in fear. Tengu. Naruto-kun, we must run. We're no match for demon of his class, she explained, grabbing his arm. Naruto looks at her with a shocked and scared look on his face. That's a Tengu. I thought they were rare to encounter, he cried as the Tengu stated to walk towards them. They are. Their entire population has dwindled down to a few since the battle of the Archfiend on Mount Fuji. We need to run now, Naruto-kun. It'll as if we stay here. Tengu are B-class demons who enjoy fighting and they have been known to eat children, she statement, and Naruto becomes pale as the demon licked his lips. It's been a while since I tasted the flesh of a true dragon. Luckily me and my brother will get the opportunity to eat you, the redhead, and the Hayabusa boy. I'll save the little girl over there for dessert, he says with an evil smile on his face. Naruto and Ayane kept walking backwards as the Tengu moved forward. Just give up, little dragon. I can you both without breaking a sweat, so why delay the inevitable? Tengu asked. Little did he know, Naruto was reaching into his pouch and grabbed 2 flashbangs. Sorry pal, but we're not on the menu, he replied, and then he pulls his right arm out and throws 2 black spheres at him. The Tengu snorts and grabs them. Do you think your little tricks will work on? Tengu says and looks at the spheres that started to glow. His eyes widen when they explode and turn into a flash, blinding the demon. Aarrrgghhh. My eyes. You little ninja, you blinded me. Tengu roared out and clutched his head in pain while Naruto smirked and grabbed Ayane's hand and they ran into the forest. The Tengu shakes his head and opens his eyes. His vision was blurry for a while, and when it clears, he sees the brats were gone and growls. That mangy flesh bag. I'll crush him with my bare hands. He then spreads his wings and takes off into the sky. Meanwhile, Naruto and Ayane were leaping from the tree branches trying to head back into the Hayabusa village. Thank Kami. I had those in my pouch. Naruto said about brought some flash bombs and Ayane nods. That Tengu is not far Naruto-kun, we can't outrun him. She says getting a nod back from the blonde. I know, but we can outsmart him. You saw how he was earlier. He stated until he senses something heading for them and sees the Tengu diving right for them. Crap. Ayane split up. He cries out and they do as the Tengu crashes through the trees and lands on the ground hard, skidding a few feet. So, you mice want to play hide and seek Hum. Very well, I'll be the seeker. He says and punches a tree, knocking it off its roots and onto the ground. Uzumaki compound . Kushina was shocked and pissed as Ayame told her about Ayane's birth. So Rado raped you on the day Shiden left to make negotiations with us, resulting in Ayane being in your womb, and then became a Misen afterwards. Kushina asked and the woman nodded. Kushina sighed disappointed and asked. Troublesome. So what do you plan on doing, since your village is on edge with her, not only being a member of the clan, but as the spawn of a traitor? Ayame was about to respond until an Anbu appeared panting. While Joe stands up and glares at the Anbu. What is the meaning of this? Joe demanded. Forgive me Joe-sama. But the scouts in the forest spotted a Tengu flying above the forest. He reported and the four's eyes widened in shock and Kushina jumped up and grabbed the Anbu by his cloak. A Tengu. What the hell is a Tengu doing here? She yelled and demanded and the Anbu sweated under her gaze. I don't know, Rukage-sama. It seemed to be hunting I think. He said. Until another Anbu appeared, reported. Rukage-sama, a Tengu was seen in the compound district attacking a group of kids and your daughter, along with Joe's and 2 other girls are being chased by it. We already have some of our Chunin and Jonin holding it off. Kushina eyes widen even more as does Joe's and Scherzer. What? Take me to the previous location now. Joe exclaimed and the Anbu nods and they shunshin away. Kushina grabbed her katana and rushes out the door. Kushina. Scherzer yelled out only for the redhead to look back. Stay there and look out for Ayame. We don't know if more will show up. She says and then an Anbu with a black dragon mask on appears as do 5 more. Kushina looks at them and ordered. You 6 are with me. We're heading to the southeastern part of the forest. As they nod and vanish. Meanwhile. A group of Chunin and Jonin were fighting of a blue Tengu who was dodging and evading kunai and shuriken. Don't let that thing get to the children. A Jonin yelled out until a Chunin was sent crashing into another. One Chunin charges at the Tengu with a katana and swings it at the creature's torso but it swings its club and swats the ninja away. Another one leaps into the air and brings his sword down on its head only for the demon to smirk and grab his head. He then throws the Chunin into a wall, causing it to leave an imprint of the unconscious man. How boring. I expect you Dragon Nin to be tougher than this. He commented and then spreads his wings out, releasing a huge gust of wind at the remaining ones who are sent flying and crashing into the ground. Tsuki, Momiji, Ryu and Kurha were trapped in a corner. Ryu was holding a katana out while the girls were holding onto each other. The Tengu smirked and walked towards the ninja in training. He was a few feet away from them until a volley of shuriken and kunai headed for him and he backed away. That was when a man wearing a white shinobi shozoku, or ninja uniform, with some armor landed between the Tengu and the children with his katana drawn. 15 Anbu appeared around them with their blades drawn also. The Tengu looks around for a while and smirks. It appears that I am outnumbered. As fun as it would be to fight the white dragon of the Hayabusa clan, I only came here to the girl and your son, but sadly, I won't get that chance. Blue Tengu said and spreads his wings. Joe narrows his eye at the demon. And what makes you think I let you leave here alive, Tengu? Joe asks in a dark tone while the demon chuckles. Simple. You don't want to end up burying more bodies than you need to. he said only for Joe to growl. So, farewell, he said while glowing and vanishing in a flash of lights. Joe sighs and sheathes his sword while the Anbu go help the ones who were severely injured. Ryu drops the sword and lets out a sigh of relief. Joe walks towards the four children and looks down at Ryu. Are you all okay? He asked and they nod until Tasuki spoke up. Where's my brother and Ayane, Joe Oji? She asked. Hopefully your brother found Ayane and has not encountered the other Tengu. He said while their eyes widen. Meanwhile Naruto was exhausted as was Ayane. No matter what they did, they couldn't get away from the Tengu. Most of the trees in the forest were leveled and there were crates in certain parts. Naruto-kun, we can't keep this up. He's too fast and too powerful. What do we do? She asks and then Blonde lets out a frustrating sigh. I don't know, Ayane-chan. I used everything I had in my pouch and my chakra is almost gone. He stated, and that was when the Tengu landed in front of them growling in frustration, scaring the two. I've had enough of this game of cat and mouse. Now I'll swash you mangy flesh bags. He says and swings his club down at them and they barely dodge it. Before Naruto could react, he is snatched up by the Tengu and brought Naruto to his eye level while the blonde struggles to get out of his iron grip. You mangy dragon. Did you really think you could get away from me? He says and slams his fist on the ground with Naruto in it simultaneously while Ayane watches in horror. After slamming the blonde in the ground the 12th time, he brings Naruto, who is now bleeding from a gash in his forehead, back to his eye level. I'm not gonna you yet boy, I'm gonna make you watch as I the little girl here. The red Tengu with a sneer on his face while Naruto coughs up blood. The Tengu smirks at this and then drops the blonde's limp body on the ground and then makes his way towards a frightened Ayane. Naruto painfully lifts his head and watches as the demon makes his way towards Ayane. Naruto tries to move but it felt like every bone in his body was broken. The Tengu raises his club into the air and grins and yelled out. Time to die little ninjan. And lets Ayane to scream out loud as he brings the club down. Naruto watches this in slow motion while a golden aura surrounds his body. Thump thump. Something deep within Naruto was slowly rising and growling. The aura around him was getting bigger. Thump thump. His eyes flashed from blue to a gold-yellow color and become slitted with a tint of red and change back. The canines in his upper lip become longer and his nails become longer, forming into claws. Thump thump. His growl becomes a snarl and he slowly got up as the aura swirl around him like a twister and his injuries started to heal. Kyubi saw the dragon statue become surrounded with a gold aura and chuckles. It's finally awakened, she said, and the statue lets out a roar. The Tengu suddenly stops when he senses a power behind him. He turns around to see Naruto, who was snarling while flexing his clawed hands while the gold aura twists around him and then forms into the head of a dragon that lets out a roar that sends out a small shockwave, making the Tengu cover his eyes with his arm. Ayane sees this also and her eyes had a look of shock and awe on her face as she saw this. Kushina and the Anbu were leaping through the trees when she felt the power. Oh Kami, he's activated his dragon's blood. I have to get there fast. She thought and increased her speed. The dragon head disappears and Naruto lets out a deafening roar that shakes the ground. He then vanishes and the next thing the Tengu knew, he was slashed across the chest by 5 golden claws and blood seeps out from the wound. He takes a few steps back as he saw the look on Naruto's face. His clawed right hand had blood on it, his fangs were bared and his eyes were now golden yellow and slitted with tints of red in them. The red Tengu smirks as he looks at Naruto. Looks like the dragon's blood inside you has finally awakened, but it won't save you. He yells out and swings his club sideways at Naruto's head. The blonde leaps over it and spin kicks the demon in the head, making it snap back. Naruto then raises his clawed hand at the Tengu. He turns his head and his eyes widen as the clawed hand descended towards his face. He manages to twist his head a little, but it resulted in him having his left eye slashed open and blood spurted from the destroyed eye. Gyaaa. He cried out as he clutched his head in pain in agony while Naruto lands and continues to snarl. The Tengu looks at the blonde with hatred in his eye and senses the Rukage in her Anbu heading this way. Consider yourself lucky, little dragon, but next time I will you. He says and glows until he vanishes into a mixture of multicolored lights. Naruto turns his head at Ayane, who continues to look at him in shock. The blonde smiles at her, then collapsed onto the ground. Ayane snaps out of her daze and runs towards the unconscious blonde and kneels down. She then turns him over and places his head on her lap. Ayane looks at the boy's calm expression and smiles. "Thank you, Naruto-kun," she said, and a tint of pink appears on her face, and that was when Kushina and the others appeared. 2 days later. Naruto slowly opens his eyes and finds himself in a bed and a room covered in white. He had some bandages on his face and he was wearing a deep blue robe. He then got up and let out a groan. He then jumps out of the bed and lands on the floor, but then hears the door open. Appearing from the other side was Ayane wearing a purple kimono with a pink butterfly on the front of it. Her eyes widen when she sees a grinning Naruto who was now awake. She then runs towards the blonde and hugs him while a grunt escapes from his mouth. The blonde hugs her back and lets out a smile. They release the hug and Ayane looks at Naruto with concern and worry in her eyes. "Are you okay, Naruto-kun?" she asked, and the blonde nods. "Yeah, I'm fine. But I'm really hungry," he says as his stomach growls out loud. Naruto blushes when he hears this and Ayane giggles. She then takes his hand and leads him out of the room. As they walk down the hallway and into the dining where the others were eating, Kushina stops and sees her son. The next thing Naruto knew, he found his face being buried into his mother's chest and was being crushed in a hug by the redhead. MMMHPH. Naruto muffled out while waving his arms in the air frantically. Tsuki was laughing at the scene and Ayame and Ayane were giggling. "Antith ah-san. I Antith." Naruto muffled out loud. Kushina realized that she's crushing her son, pulls him out and he breathes in a lot of air and then glares at his mother who was blushing in embarrassment and chuckling sheepishly. "Sorry, Sochi. How do you feel?" she asks with a concerned look on her face. "I feel great, but can I eat please? Activating my bloodline burned all the energy I've had and I'm starting to see 3 of you, Ka-san," he whined. Kushina giggles at this and carries him over to the dining table and sets him in a chair. "Ayane, would you be a dear and help feed my son?" she asked. A tint of pink appeared on Ayane's face and she nods and sits in the other chair that was next to Naruto. When she set a bowl of rice and fried salmon in front of him, she pulls out a pair of chopsticks from the table and then grabs some rice and holds it out in front of Naruto, who takes the rice into his mouth and swallows it. "Thanks, Ayane-chan," he says, and she smiles and nods at him. "You're welcome," she replied and continues to feed him. Kushina and Ayame were watching this and inside their minds, they were screaming, "Kawaii." Tsuki had a look of disgust on her face but kept eating. Kushina was also proud that Naruto activated a part of his bloodline and knew that Tsuki would activate hers soon. She also wondered what the future would hold for her children. Only time would tell. After the Tengu incident, where Naruto activated his bloodline, Kushina decided that it was time for Naruto and Tsuki to learn about the power of their bloodline. Tsuki managed to activate hers when they were practicing their survival skills and were attacked by a rogue bear. Apparently they activated the eyes, body and chakra-based part of their bloodline. All that was left was the elemental-based ones, and it should activate when they turn 12. Kushina first taught them how to use the eye-based ability, which gave them different types of visions like thermal, night, or combined both into enhanced that allows their eyes to zoom in and out like the Byakugan. AN. Based on solid eye in MGS4. Then the body on the other hand was a little difficult because it gave the person the ability to morph certain parts of your body into the appendage of a dragon-like, claws, scales that were stronger than diamond, spikes, wings, and a tail. The chakra-based one gave them a second source of chakra which allowed them to use the dragon art Reunited techniques which were like ninjutsu, but they used incantations before calling out the name. AN. Maybe I will based on Dragon Slayer magic in Fairy Tail, 6 basics only. Or American Dragon, Jake Long. Sooner or later, they will be learned the main branch or second branch's ability of the dragon bloodline, very soon. Ayane was staying with the Uzumaki family from the request of Ayame and Shiden who agreed to this, but this didn't please certain members of the council who wanted the girl to bead, but both Kushina and Shiden stated that no harm will come to Ayane, or else they will be the ones who will die. Kasumi was saddened when she heard that Ayane is no longer a part of the clan, so was her brother, Hayate. She did get to say goodbye to her half-sister and got to meet Naruto, much to Ayane's annoyance because the girl gained a small crush on the blonde when he called her, Sumi-chan, and gave her a hug. Kasumi then told Ayane that their mother told her about her secret but that she didn't care and that she still loved Ayane and that they were family and best friends no matter what. Those words caused Ayane to cry and hug the person that became her first friend. After saying goodbye to Hayate, Shiden gave Ayane scrolls that contained their family's fighting style and ninja arts. After that, she left to live with the Uzumakis. 2 years have passed since Ayane stayed with the Uzumakis. She, Tsuki, Momiji, Kurha, and Kasumi were all best friends now. Too bad for Naruto, because whenever Ayane, Momiji, and Kasumi try to spend some time alone with him, but it would result in the three getting into a glaring contest with each other and Naruto wondering why they always acted this way around him. Naruto tried asking Scherzer Obasan this, but she patted him on the head and told him to ask his mother about it, which he did only for Kushina to stare at him for a while and burst out laughing. Right now Naruto and Ryu were at a lake swimming laps to the other side. Naruto now looked like a younger version of his father due to the fact that his whisker marks were now gone, but were replaced with slitted eyes and fangs that jutted from his upper lip. Ryu's hair was in a ponytail and it stopped near his upper back. Naruto was currently in the lead with Ryu a few inches behind him. Naruto increased his pace and Ryu does the same. When they were close to the other side, Naruto taps the edge of land, turns around and pushes himself forward, while Ryu does the same. The two dragons in training were now shoulder to shoulder as they head to the other side of the lake. Naruto is now ahead of Ryu by a few inches and when they approach the land, Naruto taps it first and Ryu does the same. As the blonde pulls himself up onto the land as does Ryu. What's the score now, Naruto? Ryu asked while Naruto grabbed two towels from a rock and tosses one to Ryu. 52-49. I'm ahead of you by 3. He stated while Ryu grunts and wiping his hair. Say, doesn't your Ka-san have to go to a private summit with the daimyo today? Ryu asked, getting a nod from the blonde who sat on the ground. Yeah, something to do with it of how Konoha interfered in foreign clan affairs and how the village treated me. Naruto replied while Ryu frowned. Do you hold any grudges against that place? He asks while Naruto snorts and places his towel on his shoulders. I could care less about that place right now. Konoha is not my home anymore. The Hayabusa village is. I have friends and family here, and I wouldn't give them up for anything. He stated. Well, accepted one. You mean, Ryu is about to say about of what Naruto was referred to, seeing him nod, saddened, before his eyebrow rose. Yeah, wish I can brought her with me and her parents, before they almost getting involved. Naruto explained. And if I was pulling mind tricks on anyone, that what surprises me, is that they thought you were the Kyuubi's reincarnation. Talk about idiotic. Ryu comment and Naruto scoffs. Please Ryu, even an idiot can tell that I'm not her. For one thing, I don't have fox ears or a tail sprouting from my, and I'm not the size of a mountain. He stated while Kurumi was in his mindscape giggling at what he said. Ryu chuckles at this and speaks up. Let's head back for lunch, Naruto. I'm starting to get hungry. While the blonde nods. Me too. I hope Ayane-chan made fried salmon and spring rolls again. Naruto said along with guest, and Ryu rolls his eyes at his best friend and they head off to the Uzumaki compound. Konohagakure no Sato Hiruzen Sarutobi was not having a good day. Then again, he hasn't had one since Naruto was taken back to his home. When word got out of Naruto's departure from Konoha, the civilians partied because the demon brat was gone. After that, the civilian and elder council demanded that Hunter Nin be sent out to find the boy and the people that took him, minus one certain blonde hair with a single bang which falls down into her face did care for the boy for saving her daughter. She was frowned for she is not one of them, but Hiruzen refused to because Naruto wasn't a ninja, but a civilian, so he could have left without his approval. But when that was over, Hiruzen announced to the village that the boy they treated like garbage and beat for their petty vengeance was the son of the Yondaime and the last Namikaze. Most of the ninja and civilians were shocked at this, but the ones who held their grudge refused to believe it. The council wanted Hiruzen to send Anbu after the boy and have him return to revive the clan, but once again the man refused to let this happen, infuriating them. Making the single blonde women smirked, for those fools made their mistakes. Since she was friend of a certain red hair woman. Until the rest of the council tell her about, so they knew she wasn't interested. That however wasn't the main problem. An ambassador from the Hayabusa village came to Konoha a few years ago stating that the daimyo and the Rukage are tripling the price for economic goods and technology that went to Fire Country and also cut off the trade for high-ranking missions. The civilian council -1 wanted to know why, and the ambassador only said that you angered the Red Dragon, which caused the elders and Shinobi council to pale because they knew who he was referring to. After that, he got a letter from the Fire Daimyo, and when he read it, the man was scared for his life. It was due to the fact that the Rukage is resummoning the ninja he hired as bodyguards back to the Hayabusa village from orders of the Dragon Daimyo, who sent him a letter stating Konoha's charges on the heir of the Uzumaki Namikaze and wanting to have a private summit with him, the Cage, and their advisors, so that they can explain their actions. Hiruzen let out a tiring sigh knowing that Konoha was gonna pay big time for their actions. He was inwardly praying that the Hayabusa village doesn't cut off all ties with them and declare war, because even with their military force back up, they wouldn't stand a chance against the Dragon Nin. Sooner or later, this village will become a shadow of its former self and glory. Not only is their technology more advanced, but their military strength is on par with 3 of the 5 major nations. Kushina was no pushover either. Just like Minato, she had a flee on sight order 2 in the bingo book, and she's the last person you ever want to face in the battlefield. A pissed off Kushina was one thing, but the wrath of an angry mother is another. I'm too old for this shit, he muttered, and that was when the door opened and Koharu, Homura, and Danzo walked in with frowns on their faces. Sarutobi frowns and looks up at the 3 who have been nothing but trouble since Naruto left, especially Danzo, who wanted Naruto to be a weapon. What do you 3 want? Hiruzen asked as they sat down. We came to talk to you about the summit. Do you intend on having Kushina return the last Namikaze to the village where he belongs? Danzo asked, only to get glared at by Sarutobi. and have Kushina or the fire daimyo raze the village to the ground. Are you trying to destroy us, Danzo? I will do no such thing. He replied only for Danzo's frown to deepen. There must be some way for us to turn this situation over. Homura stated only for Hiruzen to rub his temples. There isn't, you fool. Kushina and the Dragon Daimyo have more evidence on us than we do of them. The Fire Daimyo is not happy with us right now, and it is because of our actions that he has lost half of his bodyguards. He stated only for Danzo to scoff. And what is wrong with our ninja taking their spots as his bodyguards? Danzo asks. Hiruzen looks at him like he's stupid. Danzo, the Dragon Nin and the Hayabusa village have been around longer than any other has, and they have been allies with the former daimyo of our country. Not to mention their military power is equal to that of 3 of the 5 major elemental countries. Do you honestly think we can take on a village that powerful? We may be the strongest village in the elementals, but they are the strongest non-elemental village. He stated, and Danzo just stays silent and looks at the ground. We can't afford to go to war with them. We lost the Uchiha military police force 3 years ago. That alone has crippled our forces. The daimyo will cut our military and economic funding. If not, he will cut ties with us, making us a target for other villages like Iwa. Kaharu stated, but was also cursing inwardly. She never liked Kushina or her ways of ruling a village, thinking that she was a novice trying to fill the shoes of a master when it came to leading. We only have ourselves to blame for not following Minato's dying wish. If we had, we wouldn't be in this situation right now, would we? Hiruzen asked with statement as the 3 look away from him, not wanting to admit that he was right. Hiruzen looks up at the clock on the wall and gets up, putting his hat on. The summit is in Tetsu no Kuni, Iron Country. I'm leaving the Inoshika Cho trio in charge until we return, but I'm going to say this one time and one time only. Keep your mouths shut and speak when I tell you to. He said in a tone that stated he was serious, which caused them cringe at his gaze. Hayabusa village . Kushina, along with her 3 advisors Nishiki, Aizen, Kara and 8 Anbu were at the entrance of the Hayabusa village with a carriage waiting for them. She was wearing her cage hat and robes, and strapped to her back was a nodashi. Standing before her was Joe, who was wearing his shinobi uniform. I'm leaving you in charge while I'm gone, Joe. Naruto, Ayane, and Tasuki will be staying with you and your family until I return. She said, getting a nod from the man. Hi. Good luck and be safe, Kushina. He says, and she smiles. I will, trust me. When I say, I'm gonna give the old monkey and those buzzards hell. She declared while her advisors chuckle while entering the carriage. Joe chuckles as she enters the carriage and the Anbu flank it. The driver of the carriage motions the horse to move, and it does. As Joe watches as the carriage disappears from his view, and then walks off with the 2 Anbu that were flanking him to the Dragon Tower. Naruto and Ryu were now fully dressed in their training gi and were now heading to the Uzumaki compound to eat lunch. After they removed their sandals, Naruto opened the slide door and they entered the compound, only for the scent of fried salmon and spring rolls to hit their noses. Naruto walks in the dining room, only to see Ayane and Tasuki setting the table. Ayane turned her head to see Naruto and Ryu entering. Hey Naruto-kun, Ryu-san. Ayane greet while the 2 smile back. Hey Ayane-chan, Imouto. Naruto replied as they sat down and started to eat their lunch. After they finished eating lunch, Naruto, Ayane and Tasuki went to get their gear packed and headed over to the Hayabusa compound. 2 days later . After taking a boat to the elemental nation, Kushina, her advisors, and the Dragon Anbu were walking through the forest heading for Tetsu no Kuni, Land of Iron, until one of the Anbu spoke up. Rukage-sama. The one with the blue dragon mask said, and Kushina nods. I know. All of you step aside. I'll deal with them personally. She replied with ordered and tilts her hat down. The Anbu and advisors stepped to the side, and that was when 10 nin wearing cloaks and blank masks that had the kanji, nay, on it leapt out of the trees with their ninjatus drawn and descending towards Kushina with the intent to her. They were Root Anbu. Kushina lifts her arm up and taps a seal that was on it. It glowed blue for a while, and then in a puff of smoke a silver-bladed katana with a deep red hilt, black diamond patterns, and a black guard appeared in her right hand. She then channels her wind chakra into her blade, and with great speed and precision, she performs a series of slashes, releasing small crescent-shaped wind blades at the root ninja, who barely have any time to evade it and are all struck by the attack. Blood spurts from their injuries and some loose their limbs are airied instantly. The ones that survive crash to the ground, screaming out in pain and clutching either their wounds or their lost limbs. She walks over to one of them and turns her blade into a stabbing position and runs it through his, sculling him instantly. She removes the blade from the skull and swipes the blood and brain matter off with a flick of her wrist. That was when a barrage of kunai and daggers headed straight for her. Kushina grabbed one of the fallen bodies by the collar and used it as a shield to take the attack. That was when her eyes grew cold and glared at the now charging root members. Fools, she said with a bad mood as she dropped the body. A few minutes later. The bloody and dismembered bodies of the root Anbu were scattered across the open field, and Kushina was wiping the blood of her blade, the Aka Arashi, Red Storm, with a clothes until the blade was clean. Her advisors walked forward and looked at the scene. That was an interesting display of carnage, Kushina. Aizen stated while Kushina leaned over and ripped the mask off one of the root's heads. She then glared at the mask with a nay, and crushed it with her bare hand. That war hawk, she snarled out and looked at the Anbu who were preparing to burn the bodies. Don't burn them. Seal them up in a scroll, she ordered, and the men nodded. We're gonna return them to their rightful owner. As they started to seal the bodies away. Tetsu no Kuni . Kushina and her group have made it to Tetsu no Kuni, a snow-covered country with a large range of mountains and 3 large mountain tops that were called Sanro, 3 wolves due to their appearance being similar to a 3-headed wolf. Kushina and the advisors were wearing cloaks with the Anbu flanking them. They managed to make it to the compound in Tetsu, and they saw 3 men garbed in samurai robes, scarves, and katanas strapped to their sides standing at the door. The one on the right is a bald man with a scar over his right eye and a dragon tattoo above his other eye. The other one is a balding man with thick eyebrows and a scar on the right side of his head. The one in the middle had a long black beard and mustache, long black hair, and wore some type of headgear that was wrapped in clothing. They were Mifune, Okasuke, and Yurikaku. They all walked up and bowed at the general of the samurai army, as does he. I welcome you and the others to Tetsu no Kuni Rukage-sama. The Dragon Daimyo and Fire Daimyo are inside waiting room. The only ones who haven't appeared are the Hokage and his advisors. He informed, and she nods. Also, try not to start a conflict, Rukage. I want this meeting to go without confrontation on either side. He stated. Kushina nods and walks into the waiting room with her advisors and men and sees Hiroshima Genryusai, the Fire Lord, along with his samurai, and Seijuro Hiko. Hiroshima also had the build of a warrior and had a scar on the left side of his face. He wore what looked like a red battle kimono with samurai armor and a sword strapped to the left side of his belt. When they met in the middle, the ruler of Fire Country approached them and bow, and they did the same. Kushina-san, Seijuro-san. It's been a while since we met. Hiroshima greet and Seijuro nods. Indeed, it has been a while. Unfortunately, I'm not glad we have to meet like this due to the issues our villages are having with each other. Seijuro stated while Hiroshima frowns and nods at this. Yes, I too not happy with the situation, but I am sure we can solve this problem, and I do believe that my village and the current leader of the village are responsible for all of this, and trust me when I say when this meeting is over, I will be having a chat with that man and deal with his counsel. Hiroshima stated. That was when Hiruzen, his advisors, and his Anbu bodyguards walked in. Kushina looked over at them and her eyes went from kind to cold and emotionless. Sarutobi saw the look in her eyes and couldn't help but shiver inwardly. Danzo was cursing inwardly because he sent his route to try and slow her down, or at least one of her advisors. Seijuro just greeted them with a nod and Kushina walked away from them. Hiroshima gave Sarutobi a look that meant he was gonna deal with him and Konoha after this. Mifune stated that he would evaluate the meeting until said leaders have made their final decisions. The Kages and their advisors were sitting on opposite sides along with the leaders of their country. The Anbu and samurai were hidden in the shadows and watching out for intruder or if their leaders got into a situation with each other. Kushina and Hiruzen set their cage hats down on the table. Mifune sat down in the far end of the table and spoke. Now that everyone is present for this private summit, we can begin discussing the issues that are causing conflict between the leaders and their respective country. Mifune states. That was when Seijuro Hiko spoke up. If I may, Mifune-san, I'd like one of Kushina's advisors to state the charges she has placed over Konohagakure. The man said and Mifune nods. Very well. The samurai general replied and looks over at Aizen, who was Kushina's head advisor. Councilman Aizen, would you read the charges? Mifune asks and gets a nod from the man, who reaches into his robe and pulls out a scroll, unravels it and starts to read it. The Godime Rukage of the Hayabusa village, Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze and the daimyo of Ryu no Kuni Seijuro Hiko 13th. Find the Sandaime Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi and Konohagakure no Sato guilty for performing these actions. Lying to a foreign leader of the death of one of her children who happens to be the heir of two clans, keeping the heir in a hostile environment and denying the heir of his birthright. Aizen stated while Kushina, who had her hands under the table, was clenching her fists in fury while her eyes remained cold. Mifune then looks over at the dragon daimyo and asked. Do you agree with the charges that were stated, Seijuro-sama? With the man nod his head. Yes, I do. The daimyo stated, making the elders frown and Hiruzen to look at the table with shame. Does the Hokage agree with the charges placed against him? Mifune asked in court and the old man nods. Yes, I do, he said, making his teammates and Danzo look at him in shock. Hokage-sama, you can't be sorry, Homura stated, only for the professor to glare at him, which caused him to shut up. Mifune then looks over at Hiroshima, who had his eyes closed. What is your opinion on this, Hiroshima-sama? Mifune asked the man, who opens his deep brown eyes and speaks. I would like to hear Konoha's side and let the leader of the village explain his actions against an allied nation. Hiroshima says as he looks at Hiruzen, who lets out a sigh and looks up at them. Daimyo-sama, I honestly thought I was following the wishes of my successor, before he sealed the fox away into his son. I denied him of his heritage, because of Iwa hating the man for what he did during the war. I made a law that stated the younger generation wouldn't know of Naruto's condition and warned the older generation who hated the fox that it was an S-class secret punishable by death. He explained his reason, but Kushina scoffed. Looks to me that it's how that turned out, Sandaime-sama. But that's not what I'm pissed off about. Tell your daimyo why you lied to me about my son's death. She said in a cold tone that made the man cringe. Kushina, Sarutobi started to say until she growled. That's Rukage-sama to you, ya old monkey, now answer my question. She demanded. I did it because he was the last male Namikaze, and Minato would have wanted him to stay in the village where he can revive his clan. He said only to instantly regret it when she smashed her fist into the table, causing the Anbu and samurai appear ready to defend their leaders until the daimyos waved them off and they disappeared into the shadows. Kushina's eyes were now a golden yellow color with a tint of red around her slitted pupils. You son of a bitch. How dare you say Minato would have wanted Naruto to stay in the village to revive his clan? That's what you bastards want. She yelled while a bead of sweat appeared on Hiruzen's brow, and that was when Koharu spoke up. Please calm down, Rukage. Koharu started to say until Kushina aimed her glare at the old woman. I wasn't taking to you, ya ancient relic. So shut the up. The redhead yelled, making Koharu shut up, and Kushina looked back at Hiruzen. Give me one reason. Give me one reason why I shouldn't you four right here, and now, and then have my army head to Konoha and reduce it to ashes, you traitorous dogs. She snarled out as she removed her fist, leaving an imprint in the desk while Hiruzen, Koharu, and Homura had a look of horror and fear on their faces. After all my village has done for you fools, when the Shadaime Hokage first created that village, you go and stab me, my village, and my country in the back just because my Sochi was the last Namikaze. Have you forgotten that he is also my son and the heir to the Uzumaki clan? She roared out while the daimyos and Mifune just watched the event, as did Kushina's advisors, who almost felt sorry for the old man. Almost was the keyword. Kushina, I was only doing what was best for the boy, and for you, and I couldn't allow you to take the container of the most powerful Biju out of Konoha. He would have been a danger to you and your village. Sarutobi tried to explain, but this only pissed Kushina further. Fear intent she was releasing frightened even Mifune and the hidden Anbu and samurai. Whoever said hell hath no fury like a woman scorned wasn't lying. Nishiki and Aizen thought. And that justifies your actions in separation a mother from her child. I can't believe I'm hearing this from you of all people, Sarutobi. What was best for my son? He told me how you would just sit in your seat and let those idiots beat him near an inch of his life. He also had to eat food out of garbage cans, because he was always kicked out of restaurants and grocery stores. Garbage cans, you fool. How could you do this to me and Minato? Kushina yelled out while the man looked away in shame. Hiroshima's eyes widened in shock and then glared at the four. How dare you do this to me, my family, my country, and my children? I consider your actions inexcusable, as do the ninja and civilians of my village. The dragon daimyo also agrees with me, and we demand retribution from your village. Refusal to do so will be the complete termination of our treaty and an all-out war with us. She finished while Hiruzen paled at the threat, as did the elders. Retribution it is, Rukage-sama. What is it that you want from us? Hiruzen asked, knowing that if he refused, the fire daimyo will either erase the village with his samurai army or cut his ties with him and watch as Konoha is razed to the ground by Kushina and her forces. 350 million ryo for financial retribution to the Uzumaki and Namikaze clan, the execution of those who assaulted my son, as well as 30 A and S ranked jutsus from the cage vault. She said, and was inwardly smirking at their shocked looks. I object. Danzo yelled out. Kushina, the demands are. Hiruzen started to say. Are what? Too much. It's either that or the liquidation of Konohagakure, Sandaime-sama. Kushina replied. We can't pay that amount of money, and the execution of the ones who attacked the boy are too numerous. We could end up crippling our village. Homura stated while Kushina just shrugs and looks at her nails. Not my problem, advisor.